Good,
I don't know if I can do that.
good evening, everyone. Board members, good evening. Welcome to our April 24th, 2018 meeting of the Board of Education. I'm Kate Borninski, and welcome everyone for coming tonight. It's really nice to see such a large turnout. It's really exciting. I would like my fellow board members to introduce themselves, starting on my right.
Patricia Mullen, welcome, and proud to be a Pioneer parent.
Former alumni. Good evening, I'm Anupam Chugsidhu, welcome.
Hi, I'm Patrick Kehoe. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kim Crouch. So nice to see so many of you here joining us today. Thanks again for coming out.
Patty McCoy, thank you for being here. It's nice to see such a crowded room.
Doug Brooks, thanks for coming out tonight.
Okay, Ms. Merritt, would you like to introduce your staff?
Good evening and welcome. I'd like to begin by introducing my assistant, Ms. Elizabeth Adams, and to thank her for taking our notes, our minutes at these meetings. Also, the man behind the scenes, Charlie Jones, who captures our videos for us. I'd like the rest of my staff to introduce themselves to you.
Good evening, PM Anstey, Interim Chief Finance and Operations Officer.
Welcome, Salem Rocks and Pioneer Panthers. I'm Liz Vartanian-Gibbs, Assistant Superintendent, HR.
Good evening and welcome. Kurt Tiskowitz, Executive Director of Student Services.
Hi, I'm Mike Bender, the Chief Academic Officer.
Hey everyone, Nick Brandon, Director of Communications. Shout out to all the state champs in the house tonight.
Good evening, Heather Colombo, President, Education Association.
Okay. At this time, I'd like everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The first item on our agenda is the adoption of the agenda and approval of the consent agenda. It's action item 1804-135. Do I have a motion on this, please?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda and approval of the consent agenda. Action item 1804-135.
Is there support?
Support.
Okay, it was moved by Member Brooks and supported by Member, is it Mullen or Cedu? Mullen, okay, thank you. Is there discussion on the agenda and the consent agenda? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Merritt, do you want to take us through the consent agenda, please?
Yes, thank you. This evening, our consent agenda consists of human resources transactions. Since our last time together, we have some very special retirements I'm sure that Liz will share with you in a few moments. Also, the approval of minutes from the regular meeting on April the 10th, 2018.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Okay, this evening I would like to recognize 4 educators that have worked in our district for a total of 124 years, and they are retiring at the end of the school year. First, Lee Harrison, elementary school principal at Isbister Elementary, 41 years of service to our school district. Karen. If any of you are here, please come up, but I don't know. Karen Johnson, 21 years of service to our school district, Pioneer Middle School math teacher. Thank you, Karen. Craig Stewart, elementary teacher at Erickson Elementary School, 39 years of service to our school district. Susan Tkachuk, who works at Plymouth High School and handles all of our records and attendance for student services, 23 years of service. Thank you to all of these wonderful employees for everything you have done for our students, staff, and community.
Thank you. Why? That's really sad. Thank you, Liz. So next up on our agenda is celebrating success, everybody's favorite part of the meeting. And we actually have two presentations tonight. First up will be Patty McCoyne. I'm going to make it a surprise what she's presenting. Change it up a little.
Because we can't tell by looking in the audience.
I know.
Who could it be? All right, so celebrating success this evening will honor the Salem High School Rockettes, Pom-Pom Varsity, and Junior Varsity teams with students with tenacity achieving and reaching success stars awards for earning the Class A Division I state championship. The Varsity Rockettes beat out 22 teams, and the JV Rockettes beat out 11 teams at the Michigan statewide championship hosted by Mid-American POM at the Breslin Center in East Lansing on February 4th. I would like to invite Salem High School Assistant Principal of Athletics and Activities, Brian Zamolski, and Salem Rockettes coach, Christy Adams, up to the podium. And you're up first.
I'm up first. All right. Thank you. Real quick, just congratulations to Christy, her coaches, and all of their athletes back there. This actually was the first year that Salem's had a varsity Mid-American team in school history. So the first year, they won the whole thing. This is also Salem's first state championship in POM since the school opened in 1970. So congratulations to them.
So hi everyone, I'm Christy. I'm gonna introduce my coaching staff. So first I have Nikki Foster, Becky Dewater, Courtney Bryden, and Caitlin Regan. So I'd just like to say a few words. When I first walked into the doors of Salem High School 2 years ago to interview for the junior varsity POM coaching position, I was looking up at all the state banners in the hallway and I thought to myself, how awesome would that be to raise the first one for POM? And 2 years later, it has been raised. So it brought one of my favorite sayings alive. To always keep your thoughts positive, because your thoughts become your words become your behaviors become your habits, and your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. And our destiny was becoming the 2018 Class A state champions for both divisions. I'm incredibly proud of the tenacity the members of the program have shown these past 2 years. It's been such an honor working with the student athletes, their parents, the school faculty, and the extraordinary coaching staff to grow such an astonishing program. I'm just forever grateful to be surrounded by, so many people that push themselves to be better every day and push me to be better every day. So I'm looking forward to the future of the Salem POM program.
Thank you. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to present the Salem High School varsity and junior varsity teams with the Stars Awards. So I have them, and I will call your name, and you can come on up. And ideally, I will say your name correctly. Alexis Alva. Oh. Maria Hall. And then you have to stay up here. Okay. Because Nick will want to take some pictures. And then you have to awkwardly go around and shake everybody's hand until we're all done. Hannah Harrigan. Olivia Ashley. Morgan Holman. Cordelia Householder. Ashley Janik. Alexa Krazar. Hannah Culp. Zion Rankin. Elena Serafimovsky. And Brianna Winters. Then we have Layla Byrne. Haley Dial. Madison Finley. Ashley Hess. Carly Lawyer. Tanvi Malia. We have a little performance ready, right? Nicole Miller. Alyssa Pendergrass. Paige Tanaki. Okay. Sarah Swider. And Alexia Mance. Oh, yes, thank you. Congratulations, girls and coaches. And where are the captains? Do you have a few words? Yes, no? They do. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Elena. I was captain of the varsity team, and I'm a senior this year. So I just want to say that my coaches were probably the best coaches I've ever had. I was in the POM team for my sophomore year as UDA instead of Mid-American. And we struggled a little bit, but when I had my new coaches, they were absolutely amazing. And they made me reunite with the team, and we felt so connected, and we were so in sync. And I just want to thank them so much for that.
Okay, I'm Alexia. I was the JV captain, and it was hard for us to all because there was all new girls on the team, so it was hard for us at first. But we got through the season, and we ended up getting first at states. And the way we got there was with our hard work and dedication. And we were very close as a team, and I'm very proud to be a part of this team in the Salem POM program.
Okay, and we would also like to have the parents stand because you are the people who make that possible. All right, and so now the teams and the coaches, if you could go around and shake everyone's hand. You can start right here. No, it wasn't a joke.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Congratulations.
No. I meant it when I said you're going to awkwardly shake everybody's hand. It's good practice. It's good practice for later, all the things you do. Hi, I'm from Bride.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Shaking new people's hands. But Nick needs to hurry them if he wants pictures.
What an awesome job you did. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Great program for the kids. Congratulations. Some of them have a struggle.
Okay, and next,
Well,
next up we have a very special presenter, Ms. Kim Crouch.
Hello. Hello. According to the dictionary, a hero is a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities.
The Foo Fighters said, "There goes my hero." Mariah Carey said, "A hero lies in you." Enrique Iglesias said, "I can be your hero, baby." All of that, which we just said about heroes, has nothing to do with Kevin Ryan.
Good job, big guy.
Congrats.
I'm Matthew Ryan. I'm the son of Kevin Ryan, Department Principal of the Year. Kevin Ryan is a decent principal, but he's a great dad. I can't believe he's my father and the Principal of the Year.
So why should Kevin Ryan be considered for Middle School Principal of the Year? Could it be his stellar hairdo? Could it be his knowledge of the latest fashion trends? Could be, but there's many other reasons. And I think one of the most important is our positive school climate. And he does that by being supportive of all teachers and all students.
Kevin always backs his teachers 100%. He's very fair and equitable with the students and with the staff. Plus, he's a really snappy dresser with all the bright colors he wears.
Kevin sets high expectations for his staff, but he knows that we can reach it, and he treats all of us with respect.
When Kevin joined the Pioneer team 7 years ago, I never imagined he'd become such an important part of my life. I know I can always go to him with problems and he'll help me find a way to solve them. And his sense of humor keeps us all smiley even through the very long middle school days. So I feel privileged to work with him, and he's such an amazing principal.
I think the best part of working with Kevin is the way he promotes collaboration and the sense of humor that he has, not only with the staff, but with the students and the families.
Well, let me start off by saying I am so honored to give this award tonight. As a former and a future Pioneer parent, I know firsthand that Kevin Ryan is well deserving of this award. He is a tremendous principal, and everything said about him is 100% true. So with that said, I just want to say the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals recently announced its annual Administrator of the Year Award winners for 2018. This year's winners include administrators from Howell, Muskegon, Brownstown, and our very own Kevin Ryan, principal of Pioneer Middle School, who was awarded Middle Level Principal of the Year. Let's give him a hand. Although Michigan's Administrator of the Year Award winners will be officially honored in front of family, friends, and colleagues at MASSP's annual EdCon conference on June 25th at the Grand Traverse Resort, during the ceremony, Kevin will receive a custom ring created and provided by Jelson's to commemorate this once-in-a-lifetime honor. Kevin's commitment to the Plymouth Canton school community and exemplary leadership of Pioneer Middle School for the past 7 years are what makes him an outstanding principal. He is a leader who possesses a quiet confidence and seeks to foster a high-level student-focused learning environment for all who walk Pioneer's halls. From identifying student needs and finding their unique abilities to seeking opportunities to support his teachers and help them improve instruction, Kevin loves what he does, and it shows. Congratulations to Kevin Ryan and an entire team at Pioneer for this amazing honor. I'm going to call Kevin up to the podium. And while he's coming up, I'm going to just tell you this funny story with, with Kevin and I. When I joined the board about 5.5 years ago, originally I was appointed, and I swore that I was not going to run again. And so when I decided to run officially, Kevin said to me, he just looked at me and said, you decided to do it again. That's very interesting. I said, what can I say? I love this district just like you. So I'm going to call Kevin up, and then I'm going to see if he has a few words that he wants to share. Oh, you can go first. Come on. I'll have Wendy go first.
Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Saddam, and I'm the Executive Director of the Michigan Association of Secondary School Principals. We're a statewide organization that represents 1,800 principals in the state of Michigan. And so for Kevin to be nominated and selected for this award really is a big deal, and it's very cool to be able to be here. Generally, I've been the executive director for 6 years, and I'm usually a part of the selection committee. This year I was unable to be a part, just my schedule and travel, so we had a committee select it, and then I was sent the names. So when I opened the email with the names, I was surprised, yet not surprised, to see Kevin's name. I've actually known Kevin for 15 years. Kevin and I did our education specialists together, and if anybody that's done graduate school work knows, when you do collaborative work, you kind of seek out who are the other people in the room who might actually be smart and do the work. So I adeptly and perceptively picked Kevin as one of my partners 15 years ago, back in the day before either one of us were administrators. And so it's great, you know, to see somebody that you've known for a long time and who you've also been a principal with and a colleague with, to just see them rise up through the system and do such an amazing job for kids. And as a colleague. So looking at the application that was sent to us, and you know, it's always a good sign when it's super thick, you know, it comes in the mail, it's got all his stuff in it. And the other thing that was a little bit unique about Kevin's nomination was that he was actually nominated by his secretary. And as all of us know that have ever worked in schools, people who really know what's going on in a building are the secretaries and the custodians. Yes. So the fact that the secretary actually completed the nomination and started the ball rolling, I think really speaks volumes to Kevin's leadership as well. As you saw in the video, there were several staff members that provided letters along with the actual application. But one of the quotes from your superintendent, Ms. Merritt, is, Kevin possesses all of the necessary tools to be an effective leader, the awareness to collaborate, the patience to listen, and the courage to allow others to influence and inspire important decisions that he makes on a daily basis for the benefit of Pioneer students and families. There are countless school principals out there who deserve recognition, but one thing I know, there's only one Kevin Ryan. So I think it's just like an awesome opportunity, because at a time in public education where we hear a lot more negatives than we do positives, to see a state championship POM team be recognized, to see a bunch of people that clearly like each other and get along, that all work in public education, I think really speaks volumes about the district and about the culture that Kevin set in his building. So I couldn't be happier and prouder to be able to be here with you today to officially, for the first time, present Kevin with this award. But as mentioned, our big kind of celebration where he will get a ring and maybe he'll allow you to kiss it at some point. That will be this summer at the end of June, and he'll also get a plaque and then, you know, receive kind of larger scale recognition at that point. So, Kevin, congratulations.
you have to do this on the night where we have to follow a state championship team. So what's awesome is how many Pioneer girls are on the team?
All right.
There we go. So first of all, I'm blown away, floored. So I think part of what I learned 7 years ago when I came to Pioneer was Phil Freeman, who was the principal, just said, this is a special place. And I know it was hard for Phil to leave at the time because he loved Pioneer and he'd hired so many of the staff. But he told me, he said, besides don't screw it up, was trust these people. They know what they're doing. So the biggest thing I learned, or throughout the years, is we have an incredibly talented and creative staff. And knowing that a lot of members of our board, too, their kids have gone through our school and still come back to visit. One visited today. Is a testament to their desire and ability to make sure that they give kids the best experience possible in those 3 years. So I think both for me and Chris in the office, our job is to try to be the resource and the conduit to give people the ability to do what they love and to give kids the best experience possible. So it's an honor for me to have this award. You know, I think a big part, I think about my dad when I have this award. He had to drop out of high school to support his family. And he always told me, he said, you know, if you want an opportunity, you have to do it through education. No one's going to give you anything. You have to work for it. And he went back to school and finished his degree, became a councilman, a school board member, and eventually like chief of our fire department. But I saw that the hard work pays off. But the one thing he told me, he said, if you're ever in a leadership position, shut up and listen. Because the people that are doing the work are the ones that give you the best advice. So I think that's a big testament, is I have a lot of smart people around me. And I try to listen to them and take their advice because they're the ones in the trenches every day making a difference. So I thank them for the nomination. It's an honor. It's, I'm sure, fun for them because after seeing the video and what's to come, it makes me a little nervous. But thank you so much. It's awesome. Thanks again.
So congratulations on behalf of the Board of Education. I'd like to present Kevin Ryan with the Mary Beth Carroll Extra Mile Award. There you go.
Wow, thanks.
Okay, so I want to see, are there any Pioneer staff or students that want to get up and say anything? Okay. So with that, I'm going to just ask Mr. Ryan to go around and shake the board's hand. That's a scare. He's so funny.
Congratulations. I like it.
That's going to empty the room.
That program, this is us.
I know.
It's something.
You should send a few notes to Clint Smiley. I'm sure he'd appreciate it.
You wouldn't. You'd be all over that.
I'm so glad I saw you.
So while there are more pictures being taken out in the hall, I'm going to move on a little bit to board committee reports. And first up is the president's report. I just wanted to report that on April 12th, Member Brooks and I had our next session, our third, I think it was, session of Leadership Canton. We toured 3 different businesses in Canton. We got to go to the new art van, which was exciting. And we also went to a manufacturing plant, which was really interesting. And not our usual atmosphere, I guess I would say.
Right.
It was
Oily.
very oily and noisy, but very interesting. And we also went to see some new model homes down in Southwest Canton. So we did that in the afternoon, and in the morning we got an overview of the Canton Township government, which I'm a Canton resident, and I even learned a lot. I knew some about our government, but I didn't know about all the different committees and different departments that they have. So it was quite interesting, and I want to thank the Canton Chamber because I actually didn't think that I would like Leadership Canton. Thought it sounded kind of boring, but I'm actually enjoying it quite a bit and learning a lot. So I think it's a great opportunity. I also wanted to report that on April 13th, Ms. Merritt and I met with Chuck Portelli of the MEA and Heather Colombo of PCEA. And I wanted to thank them for their continuing collaboration with us and cordiality. So next up, we have the SPA committee report with Member Sidhu.
Thank you. We haven't had a meeting since the last announcement at the last board meeting. So we have our next meeting coming up next Wednesday, May 2nd at 4:30 p.m. We would love it if you could join us. One of the biggest things that we'll be talking about is the adequacy study that was done by the state. So that is one of the big things that we want to learn more about as a community. So please join us next week, Wednesday, if you can.
Okay. Next up is the policy committee. Member Crouch.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So that's how excited I am. I could barely contain myself. Anyway, we had a great policy meeting today. We actually had a working meeting where we sat down and kind of went through some of the policies with district council to get them into shape. One was our crowdfunding policy, and then the other two related to reproductive health. Our next meeting is going to be Tuesday, May 29th, here at the board office. It was, as I said, it was a pretty good meeting. I want to encourage the public to continue to come out and join our meetings. They're really important meetings. We have a lot of fun, and in fact, we haven't had time to make our commercial, so we have a song for you.
We have a song. Look at Aaron's looking at
Right. Don't hold it against us. You ready for it?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Nothing you can do can tear us away from policy, policy. Nothing you can do, 'cause we're stuck like glue to policy, policy. We gave our district our word of honor to be fruitful. So we're not gonna be your best be believing, we won't be leaving policy, policy. So join us. So join us for our next meeting.
No pressure, Patrick.
No pressure, Patrick. Come in with dancers next time.
Next up is Patrick with the Finance and Operations
Finance and
Committee.
Operation Committee has just been schooled. We're going to have to up our game, and I don't know if we have it in us. Well, maybe. We have Patty, who's part of both of these committees, so at least at least she can make up for my deficiencies. We had not had a policy meeting since our last board meeting and do not have one scheduled, but there will be one coming up in May as we go through the process of preparing for the new budget. When those details will be announced, and we would really encourage everybody to be here, and please bring your songs so that we can try to upstage this. One question, did you guys sing the song in the meeting?
No.
Oh, so it's kind of an afterwards thing, okay.
Well, we could sing it during the meeting.
But you didn't.
But
Okay.
Witness.
Okay.
Okay. All right, are you finished?
I'm finished.
Okay, you sure you don't
More than
have a song or
No.
a poem or something?
No, I am not prepared.
Okay. All right, well, the next report is the Educational Excellence Foundation report, and we had our, what is it? I don't know, 7th, 9th, 8th annual wine tasting, Uncorked 2018, Friday night, and it was a great time as usual. I asked Gretchen Ward, the director of the Educational Excellence Foundation, if she had a little update, and so she sent me this. So these are her words. While we don't have the final numbers, you could say that it was another successful year, hosting about close to 600 people. She thanks the school board and the PCA and the PCEA for their sponsorships, and recognizes that there are many, many P-CCS teachers who volunteered to help as bid buddies with the silent auction. They were all grant recipients in the past through the EEF, and so we really thank them for volunteering. Okay. And next up, we have citizens' comments. Does anybody want to speak tonight? You can speak if you would like to.
Yes.
Please state your name and your
Angela
address.
Nolan. I'm a parent, and I am also trustee of the EEF and an employee of the district. I just wanted to congratulate the organizers for a peaceful, planned protest on Friday honoring school shooting victims nationwide. They were actually recognized over the weekend by Senator Debbie Stabenow and State Representative Christy Pagan, among others. As far as Friday, as far as I know, there were no disruptive issues other than attendance lines being crowded and unexcused absences for students. But they did gain nationwide attention on MSNBC, BuzzFeed, and all local channels. And I just wanted to say that I respect them for their peaceful protest. Thank you for letting me speak.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to speak tonight? Okay. Now we're at letter E, which is administrative reports and recommendations. And first up is teaching and learning with Dr. Bender.
Thank you, Mrs. Berninsky, and good evening, members of the board. Emphasis is placed on students across the park meeting and exceeding College Board standards as well as the Michigan academic standards. This evening we will hear how teachers are engaged in a deep analysis of student results and implementing the instructional practices to help students meet these rigorous standards. In addition, we will learn more about students engaged in leadership and service. And starting us off this evening is Salem Principal, Ms. Kim Villarosa.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to come and present to you tonight. Thank you, sir. I brought with me two people that I work with at Salem. I have Mrs. Angel Lett. She is one of our assistant principals. Yeah, there's Angel. And Kristen Casada, who has been a teacher with us for a very long time. She, in addition to that, is a parent of a Salem student. And she also interned with me this year because she is looking to be an administrator someday. So they are going to be here to assist. Sorry. What I want to talk to you about is, first of all, our overall goal. Our overall goal at Salem High School is that students will increase their proficiency in English language arts, math, science, and social studies. Our ultimate goal is to make sure all students are graduate college and career ready. And when we talk about students graduating college and career ready, what we really are looking for is that when they leave Salem High School and they go, they are prepared to either go to freshman level college courses and be successful without any need for remediation. Also, that if they choose to go forward to an entry-level career, that they're prepared for that as well. One of the things that I want to pause for just a minute and let you know that although I'm talking about Salem High School, a lot of the things that you're going to hear are not specific to Salem High School. They're really park-wide, and we share much of, well, really most of the same goals. And I'll point out some things that are just a little bit different, but overall, we're pretty much working together towards these things.
Kim, could you make sure that you're speaking into the microphone?
Oh, sure.
Sorry.
Let me.
Just want to make sure that the audience can hear.
Okay.
The people who are watching at home.
Thank you. So we're going to be sharing some data and our plans for continuous school improvement and continuing to look at student achievement and always increasing student achievement. Using data, what we do with our school improvement team across the park as well as at Salem is we look at specific objectives for English language arts, math, science, social studies. This is some SAT data that I wanted to share with you. When we look at the first subject, that's evidence-based reading and writing. And we do compare ourselves to the state and to benchmark districts to try to gauge how we're doing. However, we're always comparing and looking at the park and how we can continually strive for improvement for our students. So although you can see in both evidence-based reading and writing and math for both 15 and 16, which is when we started doing using the SAT as our assessment, we are ahead of the state average, but again, always looking at how we can improve across the park. And I will talk a little bit about, there was a little dip in the math score from 15-16 to 16-17 at the park, and I will talk to you in a couple minutes about sort of how we looked at that and some things we did to address that. Okay. So our next thing that we are starting to be able to do, because now that we're using the suite of assessments with the PSAT 9, 10, and the SAT, we were able to look at cohort data for the class of 2018. Those were students that took the PSAT 10 in 15-16 and took the SAT in 2016-17. If you look at our evidence-based reading and writing, you can see we were at 80.7%. That is supposed to be a fairly accurate predictor of where we'll be when that same group of students gets to 11th grade. And we were pretty much right on target there. For math, when we looked at the same group of students, they were at 63% in 15-16, and then in 16-17, they were at 67%. That was an increase for us that we're really proud of. One of the things that we attribute that to is that when we saw our data in the previous slide, where it looked like math maybe went down a little bit, we tried to really individualize some things for students. So we tried to look at our students that were perhaps at the most at risk or students that were struggling in math more than others, and really personalize some curriculum. In other words, really identifying these students and getting them into math support classes across the park. Really having teachers encourage students to attend math lab. Really using whatever resources we could to try to bring those kids up to a higher level in math. The other thing that we assess is the MME. MSTEP is a fairly new test for us. MSTEP we started a few years ago where it was computer-based, and that's had some interesting technological challenges sometimes, but overall it's really, the kids have made a really great transition. This test is a little bit different in that it's not timed, and students can take as much time as or as little time as they need. In our social studies for the park in 15-16, we had 66% students proficient. In 16-17, we had 70% students proficient. In science, 56.3% students proficient. And in 16-17 for science, 58.7 students proficient. One of the things that I will note on this as well is that we are well above here the state data as well. When we talk about ELA strategies and activities, some specific things that we've done with the English Language Arts Department is we've looked at SAT and done some real specific item analysis, looking at for our students as an ELA department and as a park, what questions seem to be really hard for the students. So where do we need to look at changing or adjusting our instruction to better help the students with those questions? What ones do they seem to do pretty well on, in other words, medium? And then what ones seem to be pretty easy and maybe we don't need to spend quite as much time on those? We also do an SAT data analysis and look at any types of patterns and trends. One of the trends that we noticed when we analyzed this was that the evidence-based reading seemed to be an area that we should focus on. And so we did adjust some of our instruction to focus on that. We also are constantly looking at our curriculum in professional learning communities. We're looking at our student learning objectives and what kind of using our goals and objectives from the previous year to see how we need to adjust for the future year. Monitoring our progress in terms of local assessments as well as state assessments. Also, looking at, again, what students specifically can use supports. So what students are kind of at risk for not doing as well on our local assessments and benchmarks and our state assessments, and how can we best support them? So are those kids that maybe need to be supported with reading, writing workshop, things of that nature? Or is that a kid that even something like going to our support in the, our lunchtime support for writing? Another thing that we're really trying to focus on in the park is encouraging and supporting innovation for teachers. So is there something that we can be doing differently or better than what we've been doing or what we currently are doing? One of the things that's been pretty exciting is the hybrid learning. So we have, for example, a class, it's an advanced comp class, and those students actually have access to everything they need online. They can choose to, there are some days the teacher absolutely requires their attendance, but they can also choose to work from home some days. That's been very popular. Also using cloud-based platforms. We have many, many teachers who are actually recording their lessons so that students have access to them through Google Classroom. They can access them basically 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The nice thing about that is that they also kind of free the teacher up so that if kids are looking at some of that stuff outside of class, or they have resources of that nature outside of class, then when they get into class, the teacher can provide some individualized instruction. So if I didn't quite get it outside of class, there's more opportunity often for the teacher to individualize things. So in math, what they have spent the last year doing is also analyzing the SAT item analysis. They've been looking at top and bottom questions. So for example, they looked at the top 10 questions, things that students are doing really, really well on, and then they looked at the bottom 10, and they did this for both SAT and PSAT. And they're really looking for, do we have any gaps in our curriculum? Or is there anything that we should be adjusting or doing differently? Again, looking at the SAT data analysis and looking for patterns and trends and updating our assessment. And again, one of the things that I mentioned a couple slides ago was that we did notice a slight drop in SAT math scores. So we updated our assessments. We looked at what kids needed additional assistance, and we adjusted for that. The math department has also been doing a curriculum audit and doing a lot of work with Atlas Rubicon. They've been making sure that not only we're getting the curriculum totally aligned in Atlas Rubicon, updating assessments. Also, we are, again, making sure that we have that math support. So if we have a student that isn't finding success, we can look, we have a very prescribed kind of a way to diagnose kids, whether it's through grades, through test scores, through teacher feedback, to make sure that the kids that need that support get in that support. So some strategies and activities that we're using across all of our content areas are learning targets. This has been a focus for us at the park for about the last 4 years, and we're wanting to make sure not only is it clearly identified for the student at the beginning of every single class what they're expected to know and understand during that lesson, but so that the student understands it well enough so that when they leave at the end of the hour, they know if they have figured out what they're supposed to learn, and that they can clearly identify what the learning targets are. That's something that we do. We look for whether we're doing walkthroughs or we're doing evaluations or observations. We're always using formative assessments across all subject areas and trying to use that to inform our instruction and make adjustments to our instruction if necessary. We focus at the park on culturally proficient instruction. We want to make sure that we are focusing on meeting the needs and understanding the needs of all of our students to best support them. We have started in the last few years using restorative practices and circles. We want to allow our students and staff the opportunity to address conflict, hopefully before it gets to be a really big deal, but even when there has been a significant conflict, making sure that we loop back in with those students and help them process what went wrong, allow them the opportunity to try to make it right. And then one of the things that every one of us talked about at the park in our opening PD was finding your why. And I I attached a YouTube video that we don't have time to watch, but I know you have a copy of that. If you want to watch this, this is something that we show to our staff in the one of our opening PDs in each building, and it was really very powerful, and it was a great example of why are we doing this. Our administrators all shared with the staff, like, why do we show up at work, and what are we doing this for? And trying to make sure that, you know, we're all really being reflective on why are we here and how can we best support students. So now some couple things, powerful practices or things at Salem that we're really, really very proud of. The top, I will just say that the top two things are things that are specific to Salem, but absolutely support every child at the park. They just happen to take place at Salem. The relationships and community building are things that, although we're very proud of at Salem, and we do at Salem, that is done across the park in every building. So I'm going to let Kristen and Angel talk.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
In terms of powerful practices, I just wanted to share a couple of things that, we do at Salem that are near and dear to my heart and that are super exciting. I oversee Women of Tomorrow, and that is a mentorship program for at-risk young ladies who are at Salem. So I kind of use it for dual purposes. It's a restorative tool when we have different kind of encounters, and it's also a vehicle that we use to promote college and career readiness. On the next slide, we actually have a picture of a college visit that we took. We took a group of 15 students to 2 campus visits, and many of them, I want to say 95% of those students were first-generation college students. So that was a very powerful practice. One of our graduates from class of 2017, who was a graduate of our Women of Tomorrow program, received a full academic scholarship to U of M. So that's something that's super near and dear to our heart. We're all about creating systems of equity and access. So when you talk about college and career readiness, what does that access look like for everyone? So Women of Tomorrow is a vehicle that we use to facilitate that. In addition to Women of Tomorrow, we have Challenge Day, which is a workshop. So it's kind of like a workshop series to build community. Oftentimes students are encountering issues that they feel, hey, this is only happening to me in isolation. Challenge Day kind of creates a venue for everyone to know and understand and have empathy, because oftentimes people are dealing with things that are barriers to their success, but we are just unaware of. In addition to Challenge Day, Link Crew is also a vehicle that we use, and that helps with the transition to the park, because the park can feel like a very big place. You may feel isolated. Students are connected to a Link Crew leader and a staff member, and also the administrative team is integrated within Link Crew activities throughout the year. SOSO is another vehicle for that we use to kind of promote leadership within Salem. SOSA students are often found tutoring during lunchtime. They do reading with rocks with our elementary students. So these are all very powerful practices that we do at Salem. And Kristen is going to share about some other practices.
Hello, good evening. Just a couple of things I wanted to highlight. As you know, we house the Arts Academy at Salem, but it's for students of all 3 buildings. And in the Arts Academy this year, a couple of things that they're pretty excited about is community partnerships have really taken off this year. So our students in the Arts Academy have partnered with MSU, U of M, and EMU. And also in collaboration with students from Early College Alliance at EMU, and also working with students from East Detroit High School, they have collaborated together with artists from the universities to work on different theatrical projects. So that's one thing that really took off this year that has been in the works. And in addition to that, all of the seniors in the Arts Academy program have to put together a senior capstone project. And so Amy wanted me to share that that will be on Thursday, May 17th in the Salem Library, hours 2 through 6. They will have all of their different capstone projects on display, and anybody can come and check that out as well. And another really great thing that they're doing this year is something called Rock the Park. So during the K-12 art show, We are going to have some bands featured from the Arts Academy, student bands, and they're going to be kind of jamming out all day long at the art show. So they wanted me to kind of pass that information along to you as well. And then another thing is our culinary arts program. We're really excited and proud of that. And as you know, we have the Rock Cafe. Have y'all been? If you haven't, you need to go. We're there often. I'm there very much. I support that program. I am. I just really love it. It's my little home away from home during the day. But the students do such a great job. We have two main classes for culinary at our school, and again, open to all students at the park. The first one is Hospitality Culinary Arts Exploration, and in that class it's kind of like the first level intro class, and they teach industry standards in that class. They kind of just skim the surface of everything. And then the Rock Cafe is the Hospitality Culinary Arts Restaurants Operations class, and students actually perform all the tasks and operations that they would if it was a real restaurant open to the public, because it's a real restaurant open to the public, and they do a phenomenal job. And I also wanted to point out that we've placed in the top 2 with the competitive program. It's called Pro Start Competition, and we have placed in the top 2 places in the state 14 out of the last 16 years that they've been participating in competition. So when I say it's good, I'm not just saying that. I also just wanted to note that our students have taken home as much as $165,000 in scholarships from around the country as a result of these competitions. And my last point about this is this morning, 3 of the students that work in the Rock Cafe got a letter saying that they each have been awarded $8,000 to the college of their choice to continue their studies in culinary arts. And all 3 of those students are planning on attending Schoolcraft because they have an amazing program. And so I just wanted to note on that as well. And the last thing I'm going to touch on is middle school visits. We all went to all 5 middle schools in our district a couple weeks ago, and we just introduced ourselves to the students, and we also brought students with us, some student athletes, some students that are in the IB program, just a variety of students, and we kind of just introduced ourselves to what the park is all about, and they got to hear from a student perspective what the park is all about, which, you know, they really appreciated because they don't want to hear adults talking at them the whole time. And so that was really fun. And then we had a small group session, breakout session, where they could all ask different questions. And there were really, really important questions like, do you have time to go to the bathroom in between classes? And do you really get stuck in the lockers? And somebody asked if we sold pet rocks. I don't know if you got that one. That was a good one. That was good. So yeah, so we do all of these things early on to try to start building those relationships right from the start. And then obviously you see we try to sustain them all the way through. So thank you.
Okay, so I let them talk about all the fun stuff. No. Lastly, I just wanted to touch, here we go. So just to show you a couple pictures, this was our middle school visit at Pioneer, and the kids love the kids that we bring. They're far more excited to see them than the adults. This is Reading with the Rocks. That is another thing. It's our Students of Salem Athletics, and one of their programs is that they go to our elementary schools to read to the kids, but also it's a way to just start to try to build some relationships. So they start to see, oh, high school kids aren't that scary. We actually really like them. And we do what we can to try to build relationships as early as we can. So for next steps, what we do constantly, and we're continuing to do, is reviewing data and sharing it with our staff. We look at the K-12 Insight Survey, which I know we're in the middle of right now. We look at our PSAT and SAT test scores. We look at our AP results, and then based on what we see, we make adjustments to the strategies and activities in the school improvement plan based on that data. And then we use that to plan our professional development for what will be the 2018-19 school year based on what we see as our student and staff needs. Thank you. That's all we have. Does anybody have any questions for us?
Any questions?
Yes.
Okay, Member Kehoe.
The first question is on the MSTEP for social studies and science. Is that because we do MSTEP because SAT doesn't measure those subjects?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then the second question is, what are we doing on this? Actually, two questions. How do our social studies and science scores compare against the state averages? I saw that you provided that for the SAT, but didn't provide that for
Yes, compared to state, I will tell you, the social studies for the state is around in the 40 percentile range. Science is 30%.
Okay, so we're doing similarly well in those subject areas as we are in the others.
Yes, and if you also look, there's a really, if you look at, go to My School Data, the parent dashboard that they have is really cool, and you can look at, if you look at our trend data for the last 3 years, and our comparable districts, like the districts local in comparison to us demographically, we are also exceeding.
Great, and so I see that, and I see this across the district, the science scores end up being the lowest area. What are we doing to improve the science scores? You talked extensively about what we're doing for math and the reading and writing.
What I can tell you is that the science department is actually working really hard. Some of the curriculum is changing, and they're working a lot to make adjustments to train teachers in some different methods, and that is something that we absolutely are very mindful of. And I actually sat with all science teachers at a school improvement meeting very recently to try to set goals for improving our performance in that area.
Great, and I see we're going in the right direction. I mean,
absolutely.
It's absolutely improving. So I have some other questions if others have got. Okay.
Go ahead. Go
So on the your hybrid class, your advanced composition, how did the students perform with that?
Really well.
Okay. So
really well. The data is really, really positive.
Good. Okay. Thank you. That was good. And then on the Atlas Rubicon and the Women of Tomorrow programs, you talk specifically about those things from a Salem perspective. Are you aligning the Atlas Rubicon work across BCEP?
Oh, it is. No, it's across. So it's not specific to Salem. So Atlas Rubicon work is done. The math. Let me back up a minute. The math department is chaired by one of the assistant principals, but that work is done across the park.
Perfect.
It's never just a Salem math department thing or anything like that. That is absolutely across the park. And the same thing, Women of Tomorrow. Angel happens to head up our Women of Tomorrow program, but Lisa Lewis, the dean at Canton, does their Women of Tomorrow. Rochelle Vanover, the dean at Plymouth, does their Women of Tomorrow program, and they do all their field trips together.
Got it. It sounded like a fantastic program, and it was discussed.
Yeah, we
as
do
being
it.
Salem,
We decided.
Great. I'm glad
Yes,
to see
that we started 4 years ago when I started as principal at Salem, and Sherry Hale and I all started at exactly the same time.
Awesome. Thank you so much, and I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Other questions? I had a question, but Pat stole it, so.
That's what happens.
So I won't ask it, because it would be repeating it. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody.
Next up, we have consider approval of resolution for uninterruptible power supplies purchase, UPS. It's a first reading. Dr. Bender, did you want to speak to this?
Yes, and it's really work that we're doing to protect our system. And so, as the name indicates, it really is to manage the electrical power coming into our systems and really to protect our investment in all the devices. And so we're recommending that the board consider this as a first read, please.
Does anyone have any questions on this?
So just some questions and clarifications. If I remember correctly, we had done a preliminary approval of this process because we had needed to submit the E-rate approval process in order to get this considered for funding. That E-rate approval process has not yet come back, but we need to move forward with this purchase. Not today, as this is a first reading, but we want to move forward with this, and we still expect that funding will occur, but it isn't confirmed that will happen.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, we've submitted the application for consideration for that.
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Okay, so I guess I was wondering, and maybe this has to do with the E-rate, but we didn't get information about different bids on this. It looks like there was just the one bid included. And is that because of the E-rate, or were there actually many bids submitted? Okay, 2 bids.
I think that if I remember correctly from an E-rate conversation that we
bids,
had,
but we didn't get
we had two bids that occurred as part of the E-rate conversation, and then we needed to submit the E-rate paperwork with the specific bid as part of that process. And so that was a work that we had done, I think 2 or 3 board meetings ago.
Yeah, I
as part of
remember
that
when we
activity.
did that. I just.
And it looks like this is.
This is.
No. Yeah, this is the 2 different vendor providers there. So you've got service provider as Zones is the first one. That's
Right.
on page 23 of the document. And then the other provider was Delta Network that was included.
Was that in the?
Page 23 of it's before that. You've gone.
I
too
know,
far.
I know, but we didn't get the same information. We just got.
That's correct. We didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
but,
I just
we had
wanted
already,
to clarify that.
We had already selected the vendor as part of the E-rate submission.
Okay.
Even
That
though we
explains
hadn't
it.
actually approved the vendor. It was a little chicken and egg problem, if I remember correctly, and that we needed to get the paperwork submitted for that.
Yep.
And so we chose the right vendor, even though we had not completed the whole RFP process, but we knew which one was the selected one as part of that process.
Okay.
And this is just formalizing that activity.
Yep. Okay, that explains
Mark,
it.
if I've got that wrong, please.
So we actually had.
Can you?
Sorry. So we did do the RFP.
Right.
What we weren't able to do was to come to you in advance to say, hey, we've done the bid analysis, we've identified a vendor. We weren't able to do that until after we'd already gone and certified. So USAC changed the deadline. So instead of a May deadline, we had to do a March deadline to say who we were picking to be awarded our E-rate funding in September. So we did a regular RFP. It was on the street for the requisite amount of time. We had these 2 vendors come in, we analyzed, but we weren't able to come to you all like we would have done, like we did last year, to say, hey, can we choose this one, and then we'd certify. We certified first, and then I've come to you, and if you say no, well, hopefully you don't, but we could still work with that.
Well, it's a first reading, so.
Mark, towards that end, maybe one of the things that would be useful for the rest of us, just to make sure that we're being transparent, is to provide the bid for the second vendor that we'd not choose.
Right. I think that would be. I mean,
Because we only have the vendor from. We only have
it's-
in our packet the bid from Zones.
It's just sort of written up in the.
Okay.
In the communication from Dr. Bender, but the actual bid is not in
Sure.
here, so it would be good.
I can
think.
certainly submit that. Can we? Can I have it so that it'll be involved? It'll be available for you for the second reading?
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
fine.
sufficient?
It's just if you can have that included in board notes, that would be
Yep.
fine. It's
Yep.
I don't
Well, I
think
think
it'll
it should
change.
be in the board packet
And then
for the final reading.
okay, that's fine, and also include it in the board packet for the final reading.
Yep.
Just
I'll
so
do that.
the
Yeah, that's fine.
public knows
No,
that
that's
we
fine.
did
No, that's
get
fine.
multiple bids.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep. And would you like it the same length? In other words, the whole of their bid, or just their the couple pages would actually specify the.
Some
quote?
of us won't be printing it, so it'll be okay if you include the whole bid.
I think this, like tabulated like this, I think.
If you
is
have a
good.
tabulated version, that's
Yeah.
fine too. I mean,
Well, I already have it electronically. I'll get it to you all, then you can choose what you print.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough?
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next up, we have consider approval of a resolution to purchase books for classroom libraries for kindergarten through first grade students. It's a first reading. Dr. Bender, did you want to comment
Yes,
on
again,
this?
this is very much about supporting our workshop model for our English language arts, in particular our early readers. In this particular case, these would be titles for our kindergarten and first grade students, really enhancing those classroom libraries and putting additional books in the hands of students, supported by the teachers.
And these are costs that would be covered from our instructional time interventions grant.
Instructional time interventions grant. Okay, good. That was going to be a question I had.
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam President, I understand that the administration would like to consider these resolutions as first and final in order to be able to procure these books by the as quickly as possible. So.
Okay. So you're proposing we change from a first reading to a first and final?
Yes.
On just this one, or the?
I think we'll probably do it on all three.
All
we
three
may
of the
have
book
questions
ones?
as we go through the process,
Okay.
but there are 3 separate resolutions. So.
That's true. Okay. Is there a what's your timing like for these? I mean, you want to get them into the classroom as soon as possible, or is that what we're hearing?
Yeah,
That's
you'll
Yes.
hear
Yeah,
the update with the dynamic plan later. That change to the Readers Writers Workshop, as we go from building to building, that's the consistent message that we hear. We implement it quickly, and our students are eating up materials, and so teachers are really requesting additional titles to be put in their classroom library, so this will fulfill that. And so the quicker that we're able to order them, the quicker we can get them into the hands of our young readers.
So, if we were to, for example, do this as a first and final now, would these actually be in the classroom this school year, or is this something that's still not going to be in effect till next school year?
It could be as soon as this school year, yes. We'd move forward with that, placing the order and doing everything we can to get them in the hands of the students by the end of the year, yes.
Yeah, because if it makes a difference this school year, then I would be supportive of doing first and final. If it's not going to happen until after the summer, then it doesn't really matter whether we do it as first and final or not.
We're confident that we would be able to take delivery by the end of the school year, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so for this first one, it would be, we need an action item number, so it would be 1804-138.
Correct.
Okay. And so we would need to consider approval of a resolution to purchase books for classroom libraries for kindergarten through first grade students. Action item 1804-138, and I would need a motion on that, please.
Madam President, I move that we consider approval of resolution to purchase books for classroom libraries for K-1 students, first and final reading. Action item 1804-138.
Support.
Okay. Motion was made by Member Kehoe and supported by Member Brooks. Okay, is there any more discussion on this?
So, just with respect, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just have a question.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering, this is a huge list of books. So about how many, like what would be the percentage of books you would say would be considered diverse books?
There would be, I don't have an exact percentage, but there are quite a few titles, yes, would be included in there. That is something that we are very intentional about, to identify books which really reflect the students that we're supporting. And so we are striving to make sure that we include titles that would include that an amount of diversity as well, yes.
I had a similar question. What was the process that we went through to select these particular titles?
So we have teams of educators, including administrators and teachers, who really review the titles and kind of vet the literature. And we identify those pieces of literature that would further support learning for the students.
And are there other criteria, for example, diversity, that are included as part of that process, or?
Yes, absolutely. So we look at that in terms of the age-appropriate text, content that's very appropriate. Content also connects with other subject areas. There's quite a process that we engage in to make sure that these texts are meeting the needs of our students, and also that we're able to connect with all of our content areas as well.
Ms. McCoyne, do you think that we need more time to review these things before we approve this?
I mean, I don't have time to go through this list
No, I know
one
there's.
by one.
That's my point is
there's like 40 pages.
Exactly. So
there's 40 pages of books. And I was just asking a general question.
Okay.
Well,
Because generally speaking, it's about 10% of books that are published are diverse every year. It's still 10%.
So is our intention to have a greater percentage of books than in our selections that are diverse, or?
Right, well, because
No,
the kids need to see themselves reflected in the materials they have.
And that is an important part of our work. We're very intentional about that, to bring in those titles which do reflect the students that are in front of us.
So towards that end, do we choose different titles for different schools? Or do we try to spread that diversity throughout the district?
We actually use a balanced approach because we look at it more holistically, but we want to make sure that the titles then are meeting the needs of our students district-wide as well.
So there would be a consistent application of titles in each school?
That's correct.
Okay.
so I'm wondering, when it says quantity 1, is that one book or is that one classroom set, or?
Yeah, typically that would be one title, and then we group those together as we kind of build that library for those individual classrooms.
But if we have,
Yeah,
if we have 14 elementary schools, why is there quantity 1 on every one of these books?
Well, are you looking at the K1 or are you looking further into the?
I'm
The
looking
K1.
specifically at K1.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the
Those
K1.
particular, those are actually sets for the individual schools, and so that we do spread those across each of the 14 elementary schools.
So by a set, you mean, in each set, there's one of these books?
Of that particular title, yes.
So it looks like it's rewarding 17 sets. So if you go to page
first page,
41 of it, it says that the first line item in the PO is the kindergarten
17.
classroom. They have 17 sets of that, and that is then 17 copies of all of those books that are included?
Right, and then we use that for each of the sections within that particular school, and then we spread that across each of the 14 schools as well.
So are there only 17 kindergarten classrooms then?
No, we are using we're building the libraries for each of our kindergarten sections across the district, the 14 schools. And then we are using select titles then based on the needs of the students.
So these are not books that, for example, in this section, that these are not classroom sets. These are books that would be in the library then for?
Well, actually, there would be there are classroom sets that would be built then for each of the classrooms across each of the schools.
When you look at your classroom libraries, if you visit some of our classrooms, students have maybe their bag of books that are connected to their chair, they're just right books. And so we're really trying to fortify the libraries that are right there in the classroom. Students also go to the media center to check out books, but it gives the teachers opportunities for students when they're individualizing their reading selections to have sections of books. within
So
the
then
library.
our teachers, like, there's a set of books and teachers are selecting which ones they would be the ones that would be appropriate for their classroom?
Yeah, there's more than 17
Just
kindergarten
trying
classes.
to understand how they're sharing the books.
So the kits really are based by schools, and then the larger schools would receive more than one kit, so that we're able to accommodate all the kindergarten sections across the schools.
So, okay, so how many kindergarten sections do we have?
I think it's 40, I want to say it's 46 maybe.
Right.
You would know better than
Yeah,
I.
40.
I think 46.
But we only have 17 sets that we're ordering.
Right, but each of those are 17 libraries that we have, which include the titles that are listed in the document. So it's more than 17 books.
These are
Right,
for
right.
classroom
I
sets.
understand,
Right.
but that means that one classroom is only going to get one, in a school, you're going to have a classroom that's only going to have one of these books. The other classroom next door isn't going to have that book.
Marie's gonna
So,
help us
so how do we
explain it.
determine what classrooms get
Workshop.
what
She's gonna
book?
help us to
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Maureen.
Hi, good evening. So the idea being not that every classroom will have a classroom set, but that a kindergarten team will have multiple classroom sets that they can cycle in and out.
And switch.
So these are collections of books that will cycle in and out of multiple classrooms so that children have choice and that we have variety across the however many sections are in the school. So our schools that have more sections, like Workman, for example, would get 2 classroom sets where they would cycle throughout the classroom. So we're talking about a rotating basis.
So it's more like it's a school set, and then
Correct.
the kindergarten teachers are sharing.
Yep.
Yes.
So they'll be
So
in a general location, and they'll rotate in and out. The teachers are super excited and ready and have very creative methods for making sure that the rotation is fair and equitable, and that kids have access, all of our students have access to multiple titles. And that's really it. We want to keep the interest high, so we want to be able to cycle out.
So we've got a long list here. How many actual titles are part of the kindergarten set, and how many actual titles are part of the first grade set?
I don't have that committed to memory, but we would have to look at that.
Is
Yeah.
it more based on reading level than?
Yeah. Right. And
So I
so
see there's like letters, A, B, C,
So the
Right.
D, E.
GRL.
Right.
And what does that mean?
I'm not sure exactly what you're referencing on GRL.
Is
so
it grade level?
Oh, grade level. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yep. So just right books are identified by levels. So students who are working at a particular common level, those are the books that child will go and select various titles, bring to their book box, and during independent reading time, where a teacher's kind of monitoring around the room and conferencing with students, they'll be working with a student at their just right level.
Yeah.
And so we want to have multiple titles that represent all kinds of interests and backgrounds and cultures and all of that. So that's why we have so many titles.
So they are also separated by kindergarten and first grade. If you look at,
I see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, page 58 starts for I think it starts for the first grade one, yeah.
My numbers
And
are
then-
different.
Pardon?
My numbers are. I can't see my
will say
numbers.
if you need more time, we don't want to rush, and we can take this to a second read to get
Sure.
your questions answered. That's not.
Sure. And we can come prepared with those more specific details.
Yeah, I agree. Because I was going to ask if it just went through SPAs, because
Yeah,
they
we
could have probably,
reviewed these
yeah,
through
could have
SPA.
asked a lot of
Well,
them.
we talked about them, but I don't think we saw the listing.
We
and
didn't
we
see
didn't
the
get into
list,
the
yeah.
discussions of, are they diverse enough, the
Yeah.
selection process. We got a great overview of the workshop model, which is great in terms of how teachers are getting that professional development. But in terms of making sure that we are getting the best books for our kids in terms of diversity, informational text, content related to science, social studies, because that's where the connections need to be. So I don't think we got into the depth of those discussions.
Right.
So if we could get a second reading, I mean, I would hate to slow up the process, but
Do you have time on your agenda for the May 2nd SPA meeting to review these?
And I don't
Yes.
even, for me, I don't even know that it has to go back to SPA. But I just think even if you guys wanted to go back to SPA, that's fine, but I don't think it necessarily, from my standpoint, has to go back to SPA. Having a second read so that we can just kind of think about it, look at it for our own purposes is fine.
And I think just maybe at the next SPA meeting, we can have a conversation about the evaluation process, the
Yeah,
team
that'd
that was
be
involved.
fine. Right.
And that way, when we come back to the next meeting, we can confidently say that this went through a really intense vetting process with a diverse team, and we looked at it from a diverse lens, and we're moving forward with this.
Yeah, sure.
I'd
I'm
welcome
okay
the
with that.
recommendation from SPA on the titles, because, I mean, there's hundreds,
Right.
if not thousands of titles here. So if SPA was able to give us some
That's fine.
feedback on that, or I don't know if there's
Or at
even a
least-
categorization that can be done on these books around the diversity.
But I think just learning more about the process.
I think we'd be happy to share our process. We're
Absolutely.
Very
Thank you.
encouraged by the selection of
And
books that are
you
here.
are welcome to attend next Wednesday.
And come back with a song.
Thank you.
Books. Okay, that's
Okay,
fine.
so then we're not
So-
gonna do these as a,
Well, we only have one motion right now.
Right.
And I think what I'm hearing is that we need to table the motion, so I need to know if we have a motion to table, I think, is how we do it, since we've never done it before.
Madam
So
President, I move that we table the motion to consider approval of resolution to purchase books for classroom libraries for K-1 students, first and final reading. It's action item 1804-138.
Support.
Okay, so anybody want to discuss tabling this, or are we all okay? Okay. Let's then take a vote. All in favor of tabling this motion, please say aye.
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 Okay. And that motion passes 7-0. So action item 1804-138 is tabled at the moment. And just to refresh memories, the motion to table was made by Member Kehoe, and it was supported by Member Brooks, right? Okay. Okay, so let's look at the next item on our agenda, which is consider approval of resolution to purchase books for classroom libraries for students in grades 2 through 5, and it's currently a first reading only. And do we have questions or discussion about these?
It looks like it's a similar process, but these are, again, these look like they're coming from a different source?
Yes, that's correct. It's a different vendor that we are using, that we've identified, that can provide what we're seeking.
These are grades 2 through 5.
Yes. So these say quantity 13, and again, is that a classroom set or for 13 schools?
I think they're buying 13 of each of these individual books, just like we were buying 17 sets of the quantity 1 of these things that were shared. It's the same, looks like it's the same sharing.
Same setup.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, are there other questions?
Are the levels between these two vendors the same? In other words, if is an A from book source the same as an A from the previous, is that
It's a similar process that's used, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think if we could get more information about the diversity of these books too.
I assume
That'd be
they're just
good.
gonna do it for all the books. right?
Yeah.
So.
I would hope so.
Once again, we're going to be happy to share our process
That's
in the
it.
SPA
You guys are on the
committee.
committee.
Yeah.
Just ask the question.
That's right.
Should I bring chocolate? Is it gonna be that long?
All depends.
Better uninvite Pat.
Okay. And next on our agenda is consider approval of resolution to purchase books for classroom libraries, including science topics for students in K through 5. And this is also a first reading. Do we have any questions or discussion on this?
Trying to get to the page.
Just one question. Is science reading, is this part of the literature program, or is these to
Yes.
supplement science?
That's correct, and so it's to support the learning taking place within the individual classrooms, not only language arts, but these are specific science topics, which will then support our learning as well.
Is it possible for us to consider, given that you were hoping to get them in at the beginning during this school year, is it possible for us to separate this unit from the other two literature-based and go ahead, and I'm asking the board this, go ahead and purchase perhaps the science set so that we can get these in? Was that something we'd consider?
Well, I think
Is
we
that
have the
helpful?
same question probably about.
I don't know, there's no
Do you have the
there's no
same? There's
details.
no titles here,
No
but-
titles on it, and
Yeah.
the question is are they, I mean, they're science. I'm not sure that there's a diversity component.
Oh,
on
well,
science.
there's a lot of
Sure there
diversity
is.
in science. Just ask the teacher.
Okay.
I mean, you want,
So how do we get more information on these things then to
I-
qualify whether they're
I think we can use the same approach with this one as we are with the other two, so let's just package them together, if that's okay.
Well, that's okay. My question is this different enough that it doesn't warrant that process? If it's a science set that's geared towards our science curriculum and has a slightly different focus, do we need to put it through that? And can we meet the other goal of getting these books a little more quickly to get them in the classroom? And
No.
I'm asking that question. I don't know
I think
the
that's a
answer.
great question, and that's what I was thinking at first, but looking into details,
I don't see
lack,
titles.
exactly, lack of details, but listening to the conversation, it does seem like we need to look deeper into the type of books. So,
I think that if we're truly trying for culturally proficient instruction, that would be across all content areas. So.
Hope that you trust that that's what we're working towards. So I am
Yep.
glad to share this with you. I don't want to rush anything tonight. Let's spend the time that you need to see that we are doing the work in our district for culturally proficient instruction and materials for our kids. It's an exciting time here.
So I would just as a point of reference, I would just make sure that in the committee, we're inquiring, as you're saying, about the process, about how they came up with the selections, but to just kind of caution us not to replace our preference for what books we think they should pick with theirs, right?
Right.
So it's just all about the process and making sure that the process was sound, that it led to, results that look for the things that we're looking for. Mm-hmm.
Yep, so noted. Okay. Did anybody else have any other questions about this one? No? Okay. Well, we are on to the superintendent's report.
All right,
So
thank
take
you.
it
I gotta
away.
Re-energize, get my energy, because this is an exciting time.
You need a song?
I need a song. I need a
Ooh.
song.
No, I'm
So
just kidding.
when we were together at our special meeting, when we were looking at our evaluation as a board, our self-evaluation, one of our areas that came out was making data-driven decisions. And so from that, what I owned as a superintendent is to say, all of the presentations that we have coming before you, our school improvement presentations, those are all connected to our dynamic plan. Dynamic plan that was brought forth, approved at the board level, and now is implemented. And that's really our 5-year plan, our compass for learning for the next 5 years. But what I said we need to do is make sure that we were intentional with using the words and saying that everything that we're doing is a part of that plan. From the budget process, when we finance our initiatives, down to the classroom selections that we're asking you to purchase, everything has a place on the dynamic plan. So I thought it would be timely to provide an update on that plan. And really we're talking about putting a system in place that we would start our school year each year to tell you what specifically on the plan that we would be working or marching towards for that year. So just wanted to spend this night. I will say after we uploaded this on Friday, a lot of work. I think just get patient. We'll probably be here for a while this evening. So we just tried to do some summary with the idea that we're going to verbalize some of the content, but I did specifically within the presentation added some notation so that you can see which areas each of the initiatives are connected to. So just want to remind everybody with our dynamic plan itself.
So this is different than what we have in front of us versus what is on the EduPortal?
No, it's on the EduPortal. We just uploaded some additional slides that connect it to, that is on the EduPortal. It's all live.
Okay.
But that's
I
more
see it now.
updated from what we had on Friday, just based on the request to make sure that
So
we
when,
knew which
when did this
initiative.
change then? Because I printed my stuff this afternoon, and I printed it from the EduPortal.
So I think it was probably uploaded.
No, you got it.
No, not the numbers. If you look at the online copy, there's all these numbers after each of the items.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll walk you through these. That was probably uploaded, I don't know what time it might, probably after 3 o'clock. You might have printed yours already by then.
Okay.
Looking at the dynamic plan itself, we just want to be mindful. We had a lot of wonderful initiatives going throughout our district. We had worked with our strategic priorities. We had our systems assessment. We had our dynamic plan that really came together from 2010 with the work of stakeholders doing our vision, our mission work. And over time, a lot of that, there was a lot of confusion, and we had our teachers working really hard, but really no one felt like they could be effective at doing any one thing. We had too many initiatives. So it really was the work to try to streamline these initiatives and really have a plan so that we all know where we're going for the next 5 years. What we have said consistently to our buildings is that we will not promise that we won't implement new plans. If it's good for kids and it's best practices, by God, we're going to chase best practices. But we will not do it without the proper implementation. So what we want to talk about right now is this first year and really our progress on the dynamic plan. Everything is about teaching and learning. That really is the heart of what we do. So we really wanted to align ourselves with the goals of teaching and learning, and we married some of the work from our strategic priorities. If you remember, we talked about our focus on collaboration. We wanted to look at a high quality curriculum, instruction, and assessment, and really a focus on data. So using that as a guide, then all of our other departments have aligned around teaching and learning and set their priorities for that area. Really, when we talk about how do we measure ourselves, we look at our district improvement plan. And if you recall with our dynamic plan, there's a link to the district improvement plan at the bottom of the dynamic plan. And that's really when we're looking at our individual goals of making sure that our kids are college and career ready. How are we measuring? We're measuring that by the success of our subgroups. And that's information that as you look each month at the individual schools and their school improvement plans, that's what they're sharing with you, their progress towards those goals. So this evening, we'd like to spend some time just giving really a progress report on the work that we've been doing throughout the course of this year. All of the information or initiatives that are on the dynamic plan, we won't go through all at 1 year, but we will make sure throughout the course of 5 years that everything is covered. So I want to begin with teaching and learning with Dr. Bender.
Thank you, Ms. Merritt, and members of the board. In front of you at your place, you also have the graphic that appears on the screen. And as Mr. Kehoe pointed out, what we have done is we've added on to the different points within our slides that reference specifically the number, the letter of each of the areas of our dynamic plan. I'm very grateful to be with you this evening and joined by the members, some of the members of our leadership team in teaching and learning. And we are, again, very pleased to have the opportunity to share with you an update of the work we've been engaged in throughout the year in teaching and learning and our plans as we move into the future. As we kind of think about our dynamic plan, we begin with our focus on collaboration. And we are beginning by remembering the wonderful experience we had at the beginning of the year with our opening day keynote speaker, Dr. Brown. And as the first point is listing, one of the areas that he focused on were really the 4 F's. And when we think about the fun from a standpoint of high interest, high level of engagement for all of our students, when we think about being fair to all in terms of an experience for each and every student that is of the highest quality, when we talk about the high levels of our work to support all of our students, that's very, very important. When we think about that firm in our commitment to serve all students as we engage in our work, and to provide that high level of excellence, that equity, that access for all students, and having that firm commitment in our pursuit of each of those areas. And also when we think about having faith in each of our students, really that commitment to giving our all to help each and every student to be successful, faith in their ability to try their best and to achieve at high levels. The same is true for our staff. We continue to build the capacity of our staff so they can continue to do extraordinary work with each and every student. And so we're very, very excited about the tone that was set at the beginning of the year and the energy and enthusiasm that it continues to carry us throughout the year. Another important point that Dr. Brown raised was getting to really continue to know our students and the importance of knowing what is in that second backpack of each of our students. When we think about the second backpack, that includes the life experiences of each of our students. It includes their emotions, and includes different learning experiences that they've had, different schooling experiences that they've had. And so it's very critical for us to know each of our students, not only as learners, but also as people, so that we can give them our best so they can continue to be successful. And as we share information during the teaching and learning presentation, it's all about that focus on supporting all students and that firm commitment to meeting the needs of all the students that are in front of us. we go about our work really getting to know our students, not only the data, the academic achievement, but also getting to know the students as people. And so we use the framework of a professional learning community model. And when we think about that, we think about our teachers that are engaged in that work during their staff meeting time, either grade level groups, subject area groups, other groups that they're organized into to meet the needs of the students. And they're engaged in the work to really identify what students need to know and be able to do. And that's really one of the critical steps in terms of identifying those standards, that curriculum that students need to develop a competency in and meet and exceed those standards. We also are engaged in the work of how do we know that the students know it? And that is a large part of our work in terms of using different measures, formative and summative measures that we use to really gather information, truly know whether the students have gained it or not. We also need to know when they have learned it. So then we can move into that third area of identifying our response. Our response is what do we do when they know it, and what do we do when they don't know it? And so when we engage in our professional learning communities work during staff meeting time, that really is our focus. And we use very specific protocols to really dig very deeply into the performance of the students, and then identify those responses and turn those that identification into actions as we meet the needs of our students. We are looking at aggregate data. We're also looking at disaggregated data so we can truly dig very deeply into the performance of each and every one of our students. And we also engage in quite a bit of work of kind of knowing that our practices are put into action. And we engage in that work by regular classroom visits. And we engage in that work at the principal level as they conduct walkthroughs on a regular basis, really observing firsthand those very effective practices that are supporting the work with students, the engagement with students to understand what the students are learning, why they are learning a particular item, and it's really very much about knowing what is taking place and how we can best serve the students who are in those particular classes. At times, we're also joined by other administrators. Ms. Merritt has been part of those visits as well. Other administrators having a chance to visit and learn firsthand of the experiences that the students are engaged in and those instructional practices that are taking place. Further, we have students who are visiting classrooms of colleagues so that they can see those best practices and really help to, as part of their reflection on their own practice, and then engage in dialogue with their colleagues to further build their capacity and strengthen their skills. We also have the work of our instructional coaches who are modeling those real strong practices and also engaged in that reflection as well as kind of the visiting with their peers, all about strengthening the capacity of all of our staff. And so when we think about that focus on collaboration, is very much engaging in those professional learning communities, as well as visiting and again, seeing firsthand those very powerful practices that are present. We're also engaged, as I mentioned, in a process of reflection, collaboration, as well as community building. And we strive to accomplish that through a number of different steps that we take, including our restorative practices work. And so we engage in our restorative practices to build community, but also to work through and repair harm. And as we remember, we had information shared at a formal level in our Board of Education meetings during the month of January, as well as during the month of March. We shared some information regarding restorative practices, and we're glad to be able to share some additional information on our restorative practices work. And at this time, we'll be joined by Dr. Lopez, who will share some additional information regarding our restorative practices.
Thank you, Dr. Bender, for sharing this overview on teaching and learning and the component of the teaching and learning in our dynamic plan. Good evening, board, community, and staff. As you all know, during the 2017-18 school year, P-CCS embarked in an educational journey, and this educational journey was to intentionally influence and positively impact our classrooms. So we made a commitment, a genuine commitment to restorative practices to really It was a long commitment. We know that it's to implement it effectively, it will take 3 to 5 years. But it's also a commitment of work that requires 4 phases. We're currently on phase 2 of the restorative practice work that we've been doing in the district, but the district does have a genuine commitment to it, and we have set, totally embark in it and have gotten ourselves immersed into the work. And there's what has taken place in the district is that we have trained up to now. We have trained a number of staff. We have the administrators, the counselors, the social workers, as well as psychologists have been trained in restorative practices. We've also begun to document the actions and fidelity of the transparency of how we report our incidents in MyStar. And so what that has taken place is that we now in MyStar reporting restorative impromptu conferences as well as the restorative circles. As you're informed, like Dr. Bender has said, in January and March of this year, you were presented with some information about how the referrals process and the number of referrals that we're monitoring for elementary, middle, and high school. Our data really pretty much is where we are, and the reality is where we need to be because this is our first year of implementation. Remember, it takes 3 to 5 years to really successfully implement a restorative practices program so that everyone's on board and everyone understands. So we have had a genuine commitment from our administrators and everyone. I'm always, as a joy, always when I see presentations that I have to follow, that restorative practice was mentioned. You saw it in the high school and the commitment there. Well, as you know, restorative circles is delivered to our students through the restorative circles, the impromptu conferences that takes place, the formal conferences, as well as this is an opportunity to engage our youth to making good decisions so when they do harm, that they could also correct those harm. In traditional education or environments, what happens is the student gets suspended, and when a student gets suspended, the student does not have the time or opportunity to come back and fix the problem. So in restorative practice is that allows the student the opportunity to really be part of the solution and for them to give face and correct the harm that they've done and take responsibility for their own actions. So there's a joy here in relationship of how we're preparing our children for the 21st century and how we're preparing for college and ready, because you know as well as I do that life is about conflict and not agreeing with other people. But if you have techniques that you could actually use and utilize them well, it works well. We're seeing signs in our classroom that are using the restorative practices, and we're seeing signs of the students actually paying closer attention to the instruction because we are seeing our restorative circles being utilized for instructional purposes to deliver some instruction, to build that sense of community. So in essence, these things are happening throughout our school, and it's being supported. As we look through to the 2018 and 19 school year, we see a commitment from our district to this full implementation. We are serious about this. We're going to continue to build the capacity of our staff through professional development, through modeling, through doing the things that we need to do to make sure that these core principles are being delivered. We're also going to do the following, and that is not only strengthen the staff, the skill set of our staff, but also support them in restorative practices by observing, having them at some point in time observe each other so that they can see the learning that takes place in there. And to continue the restorative practices by building strong community in our classrooms. And the last thing, to discuss the factors that considers suspensions. And that pretty much summarizes that component. We're going to be full force. We're going to be excited about this work. It's work that is adaptive work, takes time, but is intentional, and it's going to give us pay dividends later as we move forward. I now would like to pass the talking piece to Elizabeth Mosier, who's the Director of Secondary Education.
So there's a lot of great material that's going through this, and I'm worried that if we wait until the end to come back and ask questions, we're going to lose a lot of the continuity that we have in this presentation.
So the plan is to, after teaching and learning, stop for questions on teaching and learning, and then go into the operational side of the department.
Okay, great. So we'll be able to talk.
Well, after we
okay,
hear
great.
from all of our directors. Then we'll
okay, that's
talk.
fine.
Thank you for having us all here. As Dr. Lopez said, he talked about our restorative practices, and I feel great sitting in the audience listening to Ms. Villarosa come up here, Mr. Ryan come up here, and you hear them talk about things that we've been at a district level trying to implement, and as Ms. Merritt had spoken about, this intentionality behind what we're doing to help create a consistency. So as I'm sitting back there, I'm like, they're recognizing things that we here at the district are trying to kind of have happen. And so some of the things I'm going to talk about, Board Member Kehoe, I'm actually going to address here because your questions are going to feed right into some of the things that we're all going to speak about as we move forward as well. If you looked back at this section, this is goal number 2, which is focused on learning, and it has 4 components to it. Myself will be speaking along with 3 other members from our team who will be focusing on the instruction, the technology, and early childhood. And I'll be focusing specifically on the curriculum and assessment and where what work we've done around these sub-goals within here. If you look through the actual information, we have been working toward all of these areas. We talk about a 5-year curriculum plan, so our staff knows where we're going. We are, one of our goals talks about the K-12 STEM programming and aligning that and bringing more into the elementary level to create that alignment because we've had a heavy focus in the high school and even bringing that into the middle school. We want to look at exploring the development of more online learning opportunities, and I'll tell you a little bit about our progress there. And then also implementing district quarterly common assessments and what that looks like in with those courses that are the Michigan Academic Standards. So with that, one thing that if you did notice, we have numbers next to each of those represent back to the sub-goals that you saw earlier. So the ones that have 1, that's going to go back to that original sub-goal 2 and such. So as you kind of go through, that's what those numbers represent.
So just to make sure that I'm clear, because
Yeah.
I printed all this stuff out and reviewed it all, this is all changed.
Just
Teaching and learning.
yes, so.
Teaching and learning.
Teaching and learning, we put numbers to.
Per your request.
No, I know,
Yeah.
it's just, yes.
Yes, so I had shared that I would try to do hyperlinks, but it was easier to
That's
try
fine.
to just divide them out in a way that
Got
would
it.
be.
Okay.
How's that? Okay. So as we look at some of the progress that we've been working on, the first one talks about the implementation of and review of a 5-year curriculum cycle. Last year, Teaching and Learning at the end of the year worked diligently actually to put together a 5-year curriculum cycle. So we actually have a plan of the content areas in which subjects will be up for an actual curriculum review, and through that we actually created the process now for what that cycle looks like. And in that process we have a review and planning phase, and when we talk about this is 1 year out, so we're not editing the curriculum at the same time we're reviewing it. The year prior we're going to review it to see what possibly may need editing, so we're slowing the process down a little bit to make sure that we can make sure all our standards are aligned, making sure our resources are aligned, making sure our assessments are aligned, and making sure the curriculum is really the strong foundation. It's part of the reason why I'm presenting first, because the curriculum is that first layer, right? So we want that to be strong, so when instruction comes in and the support services come in, they can really build off what's already there. So when we look at review and planning, that's our first step. We talk about revise and develop, and several of our groups are going through that stage right now. We then go through an implement stage, and then we evaluate and adjust that curriculum. So the one thing that's probably been a change in mindset with our teachers and staff is that just because we did it doesn't mean we're done. We don't not address the curriculum for 4 more years. We're always evaluating and adjusting it. So that's really the process of curriculum. It is not, okay, I did it this year and we don't do anything with it for 4 more years. It's, I did it this year. What do we need to adjust to make sure we're still meeting our learners and we know that there's not flaws or holes in our curriculum? So that's one thing that we have been working on here. The other ones are really a lot on the STEM focus. So we have really worked with the high school STEM students in conducting more STEM days at the elementary. So that's been coordinated through our academy, our STEM academy coordinator, and our science and math coordinator, who have worked in creating more consistency and bringing that down to the elementary and getting more aligned activities. So all elementaries are being able to participate in similar activities or the same. Also, we have Bosch has wonderfully granted us another grant as well, and with that focus is on elementary and middle school. So we'll really be able to do some more alignment work that we've been trying to do to help build that alignment. As you know, we start at middle school, they get a little exposure in the elementary, but trying to bring that down to elementary, giving them more experiences and then bringing them through. The other one talks about the STEM activities at the elementary and middle school. So several of our middle schools and elementaries have maker spaces. If you were here, State Superintendent Brian Winston visited our school. I know some of the board members were present at that, and you really got to see a hands-on experience of what that maker space looks like. So you're watching students code, you're watching students work with stickbots and do animation. It's a really great experience because students are picking activities in most technology type fields that I personally don't have that experience in, and it's really fun to watch them and what they do with that time and space. So that's been a big focus. In fact, the enhancement monies that a lot of our buildings have received have been using that to go toward those maker spaces. Again, trying to build that STEM bridge there. The other parts that we look at are really the training of the NGSS and NGSX. I think a question came up about science earlier. So with the new standards, I'll still call them kind of new, they're still slightly new. We do have all of our elementary teachers are trained in NGSS now, so they're aware of the new standards and the format of those. In a middle school, all of our teachers are NGSX, which means exemplar trained, which means they have training in lesson development in regards to how to actually execute those new science standards. And in the science standards, it's really focused on hands-on activities and using STEM and engineering practices. So it's a great opportunity. Thinking forward, I'm kind of jumping a little bit ahead, but we have that budgeted so that way any new teachers that are coming to the district now, they will also always be trained. So we're not going to leave anybody behind and say, oh, well, hopefully you got it somewhere else. We're going to keep that training and keeping that moving forward. Another piece that we've been working on is the pilot blended learning at the high school. Last year, we were awarded a grant from the EEF, and it funded not enough teachers. We would love more. I think we had 17 applicants for that. I think we went with about six teachers who ended up working on it, where they created blended learning opportunities. And what's really great here is we had support through Wayne Risa. We had support through our tech department, and our instructional coaches came in, and we talked about online learning versus blended versus hybrid, and what are we really trying to accomplish. And in here we had an AP World History class try blended learning. We had a co-taught algebra class do blended learning. And what happened was the class sizes were smaller, and sometimes you got to work more with that individualized student because that work was being done either prior to or in a smaller setting, and teachers could then focus more individually on student needs. We have the development of district unit assessments in secondary math specifically. So the math group has been working a lot on their curriculum. Their curriculum is set that they are now working on assessments. And you can see that it says increased rigor. The way that we went about doing that, we used two things. We used a blueprinting process. If you ever want to know more about that, I'll tell you about that later. But it allows for us to increase the depth of knowledge. So we look at the essential questions of what we want our students to be able to do. We have that at a higher level, and we want students to be what we'd say at a 2 or 3. So we want them to not only be able to compute the math, the computation, we want them to have the conceptual piece. So moving from procedural to conceptual, which is a shift in the Michigan academic standards, that the test questions are now starting to reflect that. So we think about a depth of knowledge question at a level 2, and how do I assess a student to know that? What happened with that is that most of those assessments now became rubric based. So our math is kind of moving to an option where students get feedback now on the results of their math versus just whether they got it right or wrong. And the last item there that you'll see is talking about the development of a choice unit in secondary ELA. So you'll hear from Ms. Malloy later on about the ELA work at the elementary level. And following that same pathway, we are doing secondary ELA work as well. And a choice unit is simply an independent kind of reading unit that goes all year. So sometimes at the secondary level, you'll hear people say, we're not reading teachers anymore, we're writing teachers. And so what we're saying is, no, you're always doing reading, and we always want that to be part, and we want to keep the engagement of students. So this choice unit is really then moving towards students picking books that they would enjoy reading and using the unit of study as a support for the learning versus just the learning. So those are some things that we have been working on. And then things where we're heading to, one, we want to continue professional learning with the Rubicon Atlas. So that was brought up early as well. Just to clarify a little bit, Rubicon Atlas is our warehouse tool. Truly, that's what it is. It houses our curriculum. There's a lot more other things that Rubicon Atlas can do, and when we get to that moment, we would definitely welcome those. And that means it can talk between teachers. It can help change curriculum a little bit, meaning if I had a Algebra 2 trig class and an Algebra 2 class, I might be able to alter that a little bit. But right now we're using it as housing, and we also use it to help guide our curriculum work. So that is moving on, and as we introduce more groups that are going to be working on their curriculum. So that kind of goes in the second one. Next year we're going to start 6-12 social studies work. We're going to continue with some science work. So we will be looking at 6-12 science and then some of the elementary work where we're looking at the units of study there as well. And some of that work, when I say that, it's actually being done at the end of this year and into the summer. So although it says next year, we will continue that work through that year. I didn't mention this earlier. Our Prime, I know you guys had a presentation here as well. So Prime is something that we're going to continue to look at how to use the Bolster and Build program. So we really are looking at that as an opportunity to work with our community and look at help use that to get students into jobs and get internships and work experience, which we know would be ideal. So we're looking at how and where we're going to actually look at bolstering and building programs. So when we talk about the Bolster program, we're looking at maybe at the park where we have such a strong STEM Academy and CTE program already, but then the build program may be at a Starkweather or at another location where we'd actually build whatever the community is looking for. I knew this happened earlier, I talked too much. So the other items were beginning the exploration of online opportunities. So we know that this is something that's in the dynamic plan, and we are looking at pieces about that. At a parent council meeting, we actually talked about ways that we might start looking at doing this. There is some interest from our teachers who actually would like to see their classes going online, which would be an opportunity for P-CCS, because if that goes through that process, it would be a way for other students to then enroll in our online courses as well. We have the development and implementation of curriculum in the enrichment of math courses. So one of the things we're looking at doing that we are beginning now at the end of this year and going into next year is looking at what we call curriculum compacting. So if a student is really doing well in a unit, and we know that ahead of time in math, instead of having them sit through that instruction, they would then get a separate project, some other type of way to show their learning. So they're not sitting through a unit of study. So it's usually for students who do very well in math, but maybe are not doing well in every unit. So maybe they're really good in 3 units. So this might be an opportunity for them to have an enrichment opportunity versus sit through the same material as everyone else. So that is being worked on currently. And then the last one talks about other professional learning in regards to the implementation of math assessments. So anytime you use rubric-based assessments, you have to talk about norming. How do I actually, how do we give points away? How do we hold students accountable? And then talking about the rigor behind those. So those are some things that we are doing. I'm sure there's plenty more, but that gives you a small overview of what we've been doing in the curriculum and assessment area. And Ms. Malloy will come up and talk about instruction and early childhood.
Hello. Tonight I'm happy, oops, here we go. Happy to speak with you about focus on Tier 1 instruction, and that's really about what's happening in our classrooms. And of course, I've had the pleasure of talking with you throughout the year around the workshop model, around the 3rd grade reading legislation. And now I just want to dig in a little bit more and talk with you about what's going on in the classrooms around reading instruction. That's been our primary focus, as you know, in ELA as we rolled out kind of a rapid rollout of the Reader's Workshop model. And so our teachers, I will say that our teachers have been very positive and very focused on their own professional learning and engaging with one another in the collaborative work that Dr. Bender kicked off our presentation with. They're really
celebrating the opportunity to grow as professionals and to learn from one another and to learn new practices or hone the practices that they already have. And so when we go into the classroom around Readers Workshop, the model really lends itself to helping teachers know our students, helping teachers really get to know their learners as readers, what they need, what their strengths are, what their areas of focus need to be. And so as part of the curriculum development cycle, we're looking at early childhood all the way into high school around the focus on ELA. We're really keeping it a systemic, ongoing, sustained process, looking at how we can best meet the needs of our students around the framework of ELA. In our third grade reading legislation work, we were able to really put together rather quickly, as you know, a solid system for identifying the students who need additional reading instruction and then helping to support our teachers in understanding the best practices around supporting our struggling learners. And so as Ms. Mosier talked about, this is a process. We are in the beginning phases of really supporting our teachers in their understandings around reading instruction. We have teachers, obviously, they've been doing a great job for many, many years, but we really, really want to focus in on 3 areas: conferencing with students, guided reading in the classroom, and strategy group work. And that has really been our focus this year. Teachers have really had some positive comments and positive learning around that. When we go to visit the classrooms, we're seeing teachers walk around the room down at child level, having conversations about what's being read. Having children bring books of their interest level to the table so a teacher can teach a strategy regardless of what book is in front of them. It's just really beautiful work. Kids are excited about reading. That's, teachers are doing the best that they can as we move through this rapidly, but one thing that we consistently hear from teachers is that children are loving to read again. And so that's something that we see when we're in the classroom. Our preschool staff is really working to right alongside our work at the elementary level around ELA. So the preschool staff have engaged in a book study around early literacy practices, really building on the foundational skills for early literacy, always beginning with speaking and listening, concepts of print, and the foundational skills for literacy. So again, we're looking at this really as a pre-K-12 initiative as we look at ELA development. Moving forward, next year we will, just in line with what we want to make sure teachers are able to do for every student in the classroom, really focusing on addressing the needs of all of our learners. We have identified the benchmark assessment system as a tool that we will use moving forward. We've already started the training with teachers around it so that teachers will really be able to dig in and really sit with children and learn about what they know about reading. And what that will then lend itself very easily to is teachers working with those small groups, working with individual students around their instruction. And so we will be looking at that across the board, K-5, and even with our young 5s students. So again, it gives us an opportunity to know our students as learners, as readers, and build our instruction around what we know about our students as readers. We are very, very much focused on the MTSS process, which is multi-tiered system of support. Through the Readers Workshop and through the work that we'll be doing as teachers dig into that more specific reading assessment, we'll be able to even build further what we've already started around additional intervention support for students, both inside the classroom, outside the classroom, alongside our third grade reading work, where we bring in the family and support families and how they can help students at home. And so we're just continuing to know our learners and give them what they need, and that's really our focus. Julie Woodhams will be sharing with you tonight now a little bit more about how she and her team have worked to make sure that students are getting what they need. Thanks.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Excited to talk to you about students with special services. Although everything in teaching and learning has to do with students with disabilities and is connected to students with disabilities, I'd like to speak to 4 specific goals that our department is really focusing on this year. They are highlighted on the tile that's in front of you. And the first one is implementing inclusive models for students with disabilities in preschool, working with our Gen Ed preschool counterparts. The second one is shifting from a categorical model in middle school and high school to a more inclusive model. The third one is implementing PD, really building capacity for our teachers and ensuring that they have their needs met so they can support our subgroups. And our fourth one is implementing structural changes to support students with more complex disabilities in Gen Ed classrooms. So we are very excited about some of the work that we've been doing, and now I'd like to give you a few details on specific things in each of these categories. So the first 2 really had to do with inclusion, and so I want to talk to you about these activities. And the first one is we've really spent a lot of time implementing inclusive models in our preschool program. We have Gen Ed preschool classrooms in our district and special ed preschool classrooms in our district, and we are working to partner them together. So we have some satellite programs in our district where we have a Gen Ed preschool classroom and a special ed preschool classroom right next to each other. They become partners and kids are together at various times of the day. We also have a co-teaching classroom where a Gen Ed preschool teacher and a special ed preschool teacher are actually co-teaching, and the kids are together in the classroom all day. So we've really been piloting a few kinds of programs and taking a look at the results so that we can determine where we want to move from here. But it's been really exciting work, and I think the most exciting thing is our teachers, our preschool special ed teachers and our preschool gen ed teachers are really excited about this work, and they are seeing the results in their classroom, and that's how we grow. So that's really exciting. The second thing that we're doing in middle school is we have modified our emotionally impaired program. It was a self-contained program, and it is now an inclusive program. So the students are out in Gen Ed classrooms as much as they can be, and the teacher and the parapros are out supporting students in the Gen Ed classrooms. In the high school, we've had for many years a cognitively impaired program, which has been a self-contained program, and we are in that program we have started co-teaching and peer-to-peer programs in a foods program, a visual arts classes, and soon to be a science class. So these are students that now we have our special ed teacher and a gen ed teacher and gen ed kids and special ed kids all working together in these programs. We've also been really excited about work that we've done with Unified Sports. And Unified Sports is an activity where we have students with IEPs and students without IEPs in athletic events together, in competition. And this has been a really exciting program, and it's been in past years sort of a special ed initiative. It's no longer a special ed initiative. It is an athletic department initiative. So it is now a formal part of our athletic department, and we really just support it and applaud the athletic department for all the work that they're doing. And this the most exciting thing about this is that our athletic department really embraced this, took it on, and we're really excited about this piece. So now I want to shift to some activities that we've done to really focus on professional development and supporting our general education classrooms. The first thing that's listed here is we've really started to work with paraprofessionals and shifting our paraprofessional model. We have a lot of special education paraprofessionals or paraprofessionals that work in special education in our district, and one of the things we want to do is train them better to support students as they learn their independence. And what we want to do is actually decrease parapro time for students because we want them to become independent learners. And we know that paraprofessionals need specific training. And now we have goals for every student that has a paraprofessional. We have specific goals that help the paraprofessional know what to do to teach student independence. So We also did a training, and I think Kurt might be talking about that, but we do a full day training each year. So we're really paying attention to paraprofessional training. The next thing on the list is that we have done some training in years past on something called nonviolent crisis intervention, which is sort of a methodology to support students' behavior proactively. How is it that we ensure that that we are supporting them all along the way with any behavior issues that they might have? And there's also been new seclusion restraint legislation. We've talked about it in years past. So what we have been doing last year at the elementary level, we created a team at every building and trained them in nonviolent crisis intervention. This year, we brought them back and we added seclusion restraint training to that team, and we've now trained middle school teams and high school teams. So we now have a team at every building that has received comprehensive training in nonviolent crisis intervention and seclusion and restraint training. And seclusion and restraint training is really training about how not to use seclusion and restraint. So it sounds sort of counterintuitive, but so we're really excited about that. It's been about a total of about 115 staff that we have trained, and our hope is that these teams work together to support their building, and they also build the capacity of their building when they come back. But any student that really has comprehensive behavior issues, we now have a team that can just wrap around that student and help support them using proper procedures. We've opened up an elementary ASD resource room this year. One of the issues that we've had in our district, or needs, I should say, is that we've had students certified with autism, on the autism spectrum disorder, and they have very high academic skills, but also very high behavior needs. And so we've been, what we've done is create a program in one of our elementary buildings where they get, that they're serviced by a well-trained, specific resource room teacher who has training in autism. They are still very connected to their gen ed classrooms, but they also have someone who's really supporting their behaviors. We have also started a pilot on using Read and Write for Google on our Chromebooks. Read and Write for Google is an app that really provides supports in reading and writing to students that are really developing those skills. And we've had a lot of wonderful data that's come from that on how effective and how much that helps students. We've also redesigned our elementary resource room program. One of the issues we've had is that kids in our elementary building have such a wide variety of needs. It was becoming really difficult for our resource room teachers to have the time to support them. So we have now sort of different kinds of resource room teachers. Some are really supporting the social emotional needs of students, behavioral needs of students, and they're very flexible in their schedules, and some are really supporting students more academically with reading intervention and math intervention. So, and they're receiving really strong training in both of those avenues. So that's a piece that is going to be ongoing, and that we're really pleased with the progress we've seen so far. So in 18-19, we're going to continue our work in many of these things, but a few things specifically is that we want to continue the work in the MTSS framework because, of course, from supporting student perspective, that's critical. We also want to continue our professional development work. Specifically, we want to continue that work with those building teams. We've been really excited about how effective that's been to have that team in the building. So now we're thinking we're going to keep bringing them back each year, giving them refreshers in nonviolent crisis intervention, but adding new information to them. One of the areas we really want to focus on is trauma. Students that have experienced trauma. We need those teams to really know how to support those kids. We also have a very exciting project, a UDL project that we want to initiate next year. UDL is Universal Design for Learning. We really want to build a community of UDL learners and really ensure that UDL perspective is in all of our classrooms. So that's just an example of some of the PD that we want to do next year. And we're also very excited that RESA has supported us. We have a autism consultant right now that supports all of our students with autism in the general education classrooms. And we just received the ability to hire a second one funded through RISA's ASD budget. And we also always love when things are funded out of another budget. And we have a fabulous ASD consultant right now, and now we'll have 2 of them. So it's more supports for kids with IEPs in general education classrooms. We're excited about that. All right, so that's sort of what we've been doing, and I am now going to turn it over to Ms. Kimberly May, who's going to talk about our English language learners.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the short one in the group, so give me a second to get the mic together. All right. So this evening, I am excited to share information with you regarding our English learners and how we are supporting and developing them under our developing high-quality curriculum instruction and assessment. So for my particular area, I'm going to focus on instruction 1A, so the culturally proficient pedagogy for all learners and how that impacts our EL students, as well as differentiated instruction and UDL learning strategies for all students. And then 1B, 4, comprehensive support for English learners utilizing certified EL teachers. And then 1C, Roman numeral 2, implement a robust summer learning, I believe it says academy for at-risk students. And so with that, I'm going to start to talk about, just to give you a little overview of our EL program. So currently we support over 1,300 students in young 5s through grade 12. Our EL students are supported by 12 elementary ELD teachers, and thank you for blessing us with those teachers this year. We also have 15 EL paraprofessionals, 5 middle school EL teachers, 2 high school EL teachers, and we offer 7 shelter courses at the park. We also have 2 EL instructional coaches who support classroom teachers, EL teachers, and students. To talk a little about our ELD teacher support, those are our English language development teachers. We started our school year with 12 ELD teachers supporting 290 of our neediest EL students. Thus far, 31 of our EL students supported by the ELD teachers have progressed to no longer needing intensive EL support. In offering this to our families, we only had 3 families that declined services. That is a phenomenal number to only have 3 families that said they are not interested in services. The rest of our families took the services, took the support. I also wanted to share that our families are happy to have certified teachers who are able to focus on the individualized needs for language acquisition of our EL students. Our EL students are pulled out by the ELD teachers for small group instruction. This typically takes place during the literacy block. However, the schedule is arranged with the classroom teacher. So the classroom teacher and the ELD teacher, they work together on when the ELD teacher will pull the small group of students. And so some teachers say it's best during the literacy block, some choose science blocks, some choose social studies blocks. It just depends on the needs of the particular students in the group. Our ELD teachers, they use PSYOP strategies as well as drawing on students' metacognitive, metalinguistic, and metacultural awareness to develop English proficiency. Our ELD teachers also work within the WIDA domains to support our students. So our WIDA, we focus on 4 domains: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And so those are the 4 domains in which our ELD teachers focus on when they work with our EL students in the small group instruction. Our ELD teachers are also available to provide short PD during staff meetings with our classroom teachers, as well as to help teachers with Tier 1 strategies. Our ELD teachers also focus on phonemic awareness, phonics, and writing when they work with the EL students in a small group. I was supposed to flip this, I'm sorry. So I talked about our ELD teachers and what we've put in place to support our neediest EL students with oral language development. Now I would like to talk about our ELD teachers, our EL teachers, classroom teachers, and EL paras engaged in professional development on strategies to differentiate, increase student achievement, and scaffold student learning. So to share what that looks like, our ELD teachers and our EL paras meet monthly. They do not meet, sometimes they meet together, but typically they meet separately with our EL instructional coach. And during that time, they work on improving their craft to support our EL students. They learn strategies such as visible thinking, ways to support our newcomer students, academic language, utilizing the can-do descriptors, as well as supporting our long-term ELs. So our long-term ELs are students that have been in the EL program for 5 years or longer. And so we began to look at what can we do differently to support our students to move them out of EL. Typically, we want to get our students, EL is typical to, EL placement is very much like, I won't say as much, let me say this. The idea of EL placement is to move our kids out, not to keep our kids in. So we're not saying that we're going to always have to provide EL support. Ideally, we want to get them up to snuff in terms of their English language proficiency and then move them out of EL support. So those are the professional development for our EL teachers and our EL paras. Our first grade teachers this year focused on language and literacy and PD, which is utilization of the PSYOP strategies for teaching academic vocabulary. Our fourth grade teachers at our high incidence buildings, Erickson, Bentley, Miller, and Dotson. So those are our schools that have the highest numbers in EL students. The fourth grade teachers there have received PD on strategies to differentiate instruction, increasing student engagement, and scaffolding student learning. So this takes place for them because they have high EL numbers, and a lot of them have the high EL numbers in the upper grades. And so some of those students actually do not qualify for EL support from the ELD teachers because they are scoring at levels 3 or above on the WIDA, but they still need support in the classrooms. And so our middle school EL teachers, the PD that they've been receiving this year has been with co-teaching, and they've received the PD with their co-teaching counterparts. So if they were co-teaching with a social studies teacher or a math teacher or a science teacher, they have engaged in PD together around the co-teaching models, as well as planning and scaffolding support for EL students. Our high school EL teachers have received PD and worked on developing common assessments using both ELA Common Core standards as well as the WIDA standards. Our 6th through 12th grade social studies teachers received continued professional development on language and literacy, focusing on social studies academic language. So we began that professional development last year with our 6th through 12th grade social studies teachers, and this year we carried forth with it to sustain it so that it's not a one-time thing and then we move away from it. So they received a refresher, and then the EL coach remained in each of the buildings for 3 days, pushing into the classrooms, modeling lessons, and coaching teachers on using those strategies with students. The next bullet, we talk about our ELD teachers and how they are supporting EL students and families during instructional support team meetings by informing team members of the needs and learning styles of the students. And so our ELD teachers and EL coaches represent our EL students at child study team meetings. They provide an in-depth look at EL students, including helping to identify the learning styles of our EL students and understanding as well as respecting the differences in schooling and bridging the differences to the students' advantage. So they are that voice at the table to help our teachers, to help our building principals, and just to be engaged in those conversations. The next thing is that our ELD and EL teachers assist in securing translators, which help us to build trusting and sustainable relationships with our families. So when teachers or principals need to have those parent meetings, our ELD teachers and our EL teachers work with the EL office to secure translators to come in to be a part of those meetings for our families. And we've seen, as we've increased that, and not just to parent-teacher conferences, but to those meetings where they need to, well, now with the 3rd grade reading law, or just to have those conversations about how their child is progressing, we've noticed the way in which the parents come in, and they're so much more relaxed, and they're so much more willing to share because there's someone there that can interpret and help them to understand the questions that we're asking, and they're able to share the history with us, which allows us to create a better plan to support our students. The other piece is that our ELD and our EL teachers provide additional support to our newcomer families. So when we have newcomer students coming in, these are typically students that have not had formal schooling, and they do not speak English. And so for the students and parents to know that there is a go-to person in the building that is not only advocating for their student, but also they're meeting their child at the door, basically, holding their hand, walking them through the school, helping them to become familiar with the school, helping them to learn survival language, because that's what we want to start with. Where's the bathroom? Where's the water fountain? Where's the lunchroom? Things that we take for granted. They're coming to school and they don't know these things. So our ELD teachers are able to commit that time to support our students. The next piece that I'd like to share is how our ELD teachers are assisting with administering the NWEA, WIDA, and MSTEP. And the way that looks is that they're able to provide small group administration as well as accommodations if necessary. So this is another way that we're able to provide for our students in the ways that without our ELD teachers or our EL teachers, we haven't been able to necessarily do that. Our EL paras have been phenomenal. They have held our program for as long as they could, but as you know, they can't proctor assessments. We have to have certified teachers to do that. So now we're able to do that, and the buildings are seeing a huge difference now with the MSTEP. It has helped tremendously. The next piece that I'd like to talk about is that we, as you all know, I shared earlier in the year that we implemented our EL Summer Jumpstart program, and we received rave reviews, and we're also seeing the impact that it made as the school year started and the gains that our students have made. The other piece is implementing the co-teaching model that is taking place at the middle school. We moved to a co-teaching model to allow our students to receive support in the content areas as well. So initially we were only running EL courses, and so now we are running EL courses along with our EL teachers pushing into core content classes such as math, social studies, science, and ELA. And it varies from building to building, but it allows them to work extensively with the students inside of the classroom versus outside of the classroom and not being able to assist with what's going on at that moment. And then moving forward, there's a video that I'd like to share. This video, when we talk about Dr. Brown and the wheelbarrow, this video really allows us to showcase the work of our ELD teachers, and this is the work of an ELD teacher actually at Field, and how P-CCS embraces diversity, supporting a collaborative culture and climate. And then I'm gonna ask Nick to go ahead and cue the video. And just the setup behind this video, Phil hosted a event. It was their diversity event called Around Our World, celebrating our rich cultural diversity. And so as part of the program, they made this video. They also sent home invitations and permission slips. And what was so exciting about this is that we were able to translate the permission slips and the invitations. We translated, I want to tell you, in about 8 different languages to get all of this going. So this was just a phenomenal night for them. Maybe not? Okay.
My name is Rakan. I'm from Saudi Arabia.
There we go.
My name is Rakan. I'm from Saudi Arabia.
My name is Kubab and I am from Pakistan.
I'm Rebecca Mesfin and I'm from Ethiopia.
My name is Mariana.
My name is Miguel
And we're from Brazil.
My name is Rika and I'm from India.
My name is Alger and I'm from the Philippines.
My name is Nolan. I'm from the United States of America.
My name is Saad and I was born in Pakistan.
My name is Aiden and I come from Albania.
I'm Matty. I'm from Thailand.
My name is Kevin and I'm from India.
My name is Eileen and I'm from Mexico.
My name is Dora and I'm from Mexico.
I am Angelina. I am from Vietnam.
My name is Catherine.
My name is Carson.
And our family is from Honduras.
We may have different religions.
We have different languages.
We have different colored skins.
But we all belong to one human race.
We are beautiful.
We're strong.
We are proud.
We are Field.
So just to share a little, and you all may know this, you may not know this, but it is huge for our students to be able to, first of all, share their names and where they're from, and then to be able to have the opportunity to make the flags and to write the names of their countries, and just to know that that is valued. That is huge. So when we talk about Dr. Brown and building relationships and understanding what's in students' backpacks, that's a part of their backpacks. And so we have now created an environment where they feel welcomed and they're excited and they want to be in school and they feel like people want to hear about what's in their backpacks. So just wanted to share that with you guys. That's a little warm fuzzy from our EL department. And our next steps are, we are excited that we are expanding our Summer Jump Start program this year to include grades 6 through 8. So our program this year will run our students K through 8. And we are going to work on supporting our neediest middle school EL students in ELA and math to jumpstart the school year. So it'll be a very similar program to what we had for K-5, but it'll just be 6 through 8. We are also going to continue our language and literacy PD with 5th grade teachers at the high incidence buildings next year. So this year we hit 4th grade, next year we will hit 5th grade teachers. We are going to continue PSYOP training. We will work with another grade level, and I will work with both Liz and Maureen to determine what will be the next grade levels that we're going to work on. And that all comes through our, as we're doing our, completing the district school improvement plan, as we're looking at data and we're having those conversations. And then we're going to also continue building trust and sustainable relationships with our EL families by utilizing translators for parent meetings, translating our documents, and utilizing Language Line, which allows us to get translators on the phone immediately. So Language Line is a system that'll set up in the office, and our teachers will have access to it, as well as building principals and secretaries. The other piece that we're looking at when we talk about translating our documents, we are going to begin to have our district documents translated in our top five languages. So that will be another way of us, again, building those trusting and sustainable relationships. And finally, I just would like to say thank you for the opportunity to share our work and being committed to our EL students. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Mark, or pass it over to Mark, because you guys know him already.
Tough to follow those kids. So good evening. Our department has also been working to support the dynamic plan. I'd like to just focus on 2 areas that we focused on this year. The first is building capacity of our staff to thoughtfully integrate technology within our learning environments. There's at least 4 ways that we've been doing that. We share information with our staff deliberately. We have been encouraging and arranging for attendance at, whoops, I'll let you.
Mark, it's in front of you there.
Yep, oh, sorry. And that's me. Another way that we've been doing that is by making arrangements to have staff attendance at conferences where discussions around best practices are held. These are conferences such as McCall. A third way is we have every year had a chance to do professional development for our staff. This year, no exception. We extended the Ed Camp model, which is a model in which the attendees' questions and wonders are honored and explored. We extended that from middle school, where we saw that as a very successful Ed Camp last year, to grades K through 12. So all 3 grade levels had an Ed Camp style PD this year. And then a fourth way that we've been working to support the dynamic plan and trying to build staff capacity is we have a train the trainer model where our tech integration specialists work with all staff and make themselves available, but we also identify tech coaches. These are instructional staff in all of our buildings that have self-identified as people that want to support their colleagues in thoughtful integration of technology. We go into those buildings, we provide them release time to have conversations with the tech integration specialists as well as colleagues over the course of a day. And these are really rich experiences for them to have an opportunity to be outside of their classroom and work with others in their classrooms. So 4 ways, excuse me. And then in addition, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's important for our lines of communication and staff capacity building, we introduced at the start of the school year a new help desk system. It's from Atlassian, it's called Jira. You might hear them on the radio. Anyway, Wayne Risa made that available for all member districts, and we took advantage of that, implemented at the beginning of the year. It's been, I'd like to almost call it wildly successful. It's very the interface is quite nice. We've had about 4,083 just this morning tickets submitted over the course of the year. We've closed 4,016 of them, with the exception of 2 periods, the start of the school year when you have a crazy, everybody's coming in, and the return from the winter break. We were able to keep pace with those tickets, close them in short order. Staff were able, among other things, to be able to submit tickets at home, whereas in our old home-brewed help desk system, you had to be in district to be able to submit the ticket because we didn't have a publicly facing IP. So staff are interestingly submitting tickets weekends and whatnot, and we're able to respond in some cases before they even come back to school. So I think it's really well received, and one testament to that is that 1,137 people have been kind enough to give us feedback on those service tickets, and our overall average is 4.9 out of 5 being 5 best. And so that's a real nice kudo. And there's a number of comments that are I've shared with my staff out of pride that comment on how pleased the staff were with the responsiveness and the quality of the support that they received. And then the other area of focus to mention is our interest in improving or strengthening the network and building its resiliency. So in that regard, we've been doing a few things. One is we will have concluded the AP, or the Access Point project that you all were aware of, where we're improving the access points, these guys across the board. That will lead to higher levels of concurrency or handling of density within a given area, as well as better throughput. That's going to be in place before the start of the next school year. Alongside that, there's a new authentication tool that we're going to be able to then make available, which allows the students on a personal device to be able to connect to our internal network, which doesn't have the same cap. In fact, has no cap. It's unlike the guest network insofar as it allows for as much access as anybody else would have if they were on a district device. So we feel like that'll also make a grand help for those that are bringing in. And we literally are seeing upwards of 3,000 to 4,000 personal devices on our network on any given day. And to that end, we are aware that for our focus for next year, we are going to be looking to try to do more support for staff and administrators on how to handle and support the student choice to bring in their own devices, because we want to welcome those devices in. I think that sometimes we are often more, sometimes it's a reluctance on the part of staff to have that different form factor in their environment, because the Chromebooks have been wildly successful. We've had grand acceptance, especially at the middle school level, and of course where we have it one-to-one at the elementary. But we also realize that to help our students be ready for what's next, post-secondary, they need to be able to come in with their own device and navigate, and we want to have our staff alongside that support them in that choice. So that's what's coming up next. And then what's really coming up next is Anthony Ruella, our Executive Director of Data and School Improvement. I'll turn this over to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. So I will be batting cleanup for the department. And I'm going to talk to you guys this evening about the last sub-goal, which is development of a data culture within a PLC framework. And Dr. Bender started us off with talking to you about the importance of a PLC framework and how that is the foundation of the work that we do. That professional learning that we engage in is so important in our ability as professionals to meet the needs of the students who are in front of us. So we had, Mark actually wound up talking about sub-goal number 4, so I'll hit on the first 3. And really the first goal is all about continuous school improvement and utilizing a continuous improvement framework. The second goal is about implementing a case management approach to analyzing student data. And the third is talking about a comprehensive approach for utilizing student learning objectives in order to, within the teacher evaluation system. So before I talk about some of the bullets and the work that we did, one of the things that I noticed or listened sitting up here is that each one of my colleagues talked about initiatives that they were leading their colleagues through. There's really, really a ton of work that is going on. But one of the foundational pieces that each of my colleagues talked about was the data that informed the decision making, the data that informed the planning, whether it was at the district improvement level or at the school improvement level. And then the data that informed the decision making and the planning at the teacher level. So really we're looking within the department, we're looking at data at multiple levels. We're looking at that high level data that drives our district improvement planning or our school level planning, but also that teacher level data, that student level data that informs student progress, not only tells the teacher what the student knows and is able to do, but also tells parents what the students know and are able to do. And more importantly, and this is really the crux of what we're trying to get to, is students knowing their own data. Students being able to be reflective and know what they can do. And that will help with that planning and that goal setting. So that's really, the foundation of what we're trying to do with these activities around data and school improvement this year. So one of the first things that we did, again, looking at that high-level data, is that we provided training and professional learning, facilitated professional learning, really, for all of our K-12 building school improvement teams. And really what we did is we got the teams together and focused our professional learning around the comprehensive needs assessment, which really is a school improvement and a district improvement process tool, depending upon how you look at it, where the teams really compile all their data, their demographic data, their process data, their perception data, and their actual student performance data, and looks at the data in such a way that they can not only analyze and evaluate the progress that they're making on their goals, but also start their planning for future goals and writing their plans. To that extent, also this year have increased for our district improvement team, our stakeholder team, improved their involvement in looking at district data, our district comprehensive needs assessment, and providing feedback on that, and utilizing our district improvement stakeholder team, utilizing their feedback in a more comprehensive way than we have in the past. Getting more to the building and classroom level, this year we've engaged in a series of professional development for buildings, K-8 buildings. They brought their administrator and a data coach from each team to really look at how, at the building level, they could use NWEA data to inform planning and practice in the school improvement plans, but also how teachers can use that data in their classrooms to affect their own instruction. And again, more importantly, like I talked before, about how teachers can share that data with students and parents and really bring it down to the student level with respect to everybody understanding where that student is at that point in time and helping with planning moving forward. An extension of that was some professional development I did with all K-5 special education teachers, and where we really looked in depth at the different reports and tools within the NWEA system to help those teachers learn how to use the in-depth detail within the NWEA reports to write standards-based IEPs, to really support their work at the student level. Similarly, data is, again, it's only valuable if it drives action. So working real closely with the EL department, special education department, as well as curriculum departments to utilize the tools we have to create reports where instead of department heads and supervisors and building principals and even teachers having to come to me for data, right? They have the ability to access that data in real time on their own, right? To really make a more efficient system so that data becomes more actionable in real time. And then finally, within our goals for this year is worked collaboratively, that's right, can't even say it, with a team of administrators and PCEA leadership to revise to develop a revised approach for writing, evaluating our student learning objectives, and so that we are better utilizing them in the teacher evaluation system. And we actually used a very detailed process over the course of 10 meetings that has been laid out by Michigan Department of Education and has been really supportive. And I feel like we came up with a real great product and a recommendation that already have supported, I've presented to the P-CCS core leadership team, an executive board, as well as our administrative core leadership team. So moving forward with professional development this May for four staff members from each one of our buildings, our K-8 buildings, so that going into the summer, they have time to work on and plan their own professional development for teachers and to support the SLO process next year. So moving forward, really looking at further developing our systems. I mentioned earlier, right, so data's only valuable if it's actionable, and the quicker that our practitioners can access student data in an efficient way, the more valuable it is for them at the building level and at the student level. So for example, my colleagues have talked about child study teams that are getting, within this case management approach, teams that are working on students that have specific needs. They need to more efficiently be able to get their hands on student performance data in order to create plans that can be actualized in that classroom and operationalized in real time. So really looking at figuring out ways to come up with both a dashboard for students, but also an early warning system so that we catch students before they fall through the cracks. And then finally, again, going to utilize that SLO process to continue to develop our professional expertise around using data to impact instruction at the classroom level. And that's an ongoing process, and it really connects well with what Liz said, as well as with the continuous school improvement process, really always looking to use data to inform our practice and refine what we do so that we meet the needs of all students. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Bender.
Thank you. This evening we set out to convey our commitment to ensuring all students have what they need to be successful to strive to meet those rigorous academic standards, to really engage in that deep learning, to provide that very high quality instruction, and to use a very appropriate formative and summative assessments to inform students, staff, their parents about how they're doing. And so we very much appreciate the opportunity to share with you the work that's going on in teaching and learning. I want to thank our team for their leadership and the information that they shared this evening, and we welcome your questions.
Member Kehoe. I'm going to start.
Can I say something first?
Yeah, please. That's what I was looking to everybody else.
I do. Thank you all so much. Thank you. Before we get to questioning, I would like to suggest that we postpone after questioning the remainder of the presentation, because that was an hour and 20 minutes and a lot to take in, and I'm fried. Personally, I'm sure we've all put in long days. Can we postpone the remainder for another meeting and take this in bits, because this is a lot for us to process?
I do think we need to be cognizant of other staff members who are waiting to present tonight and have been here waiting to do that.
I would definitely say, I haven't checked with my staff, but they are definitely flexible enough if we were to look at this over 2 parts, depending on the number of questions. Yeah, we appreciate
everybody's
that.
time.
So just for my feedback on this is that this was the area that I had the most questions on. And I looked at the other stuff, at least for me, I'm not likely to have a lot of questions in the other sections. So if that makes any difference to you guys as to whether you want to continue with those or not.
So I definitely know that we'll have to change the tape. And so why don't we go through maybe the questions and see where we land? And we're definitely flexible enough if we want to say let's do part 2 at the next meeting, or if we want to continue on through this evening. How does that sound?
That I respect all your time. I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't, but I just wanted to throw it out there that maybe
we'd be better served or alternately served if we considered that. Appreciate that.
Okay, so we'll do questions and then reevaluate. Okay. Member Kehoe.
So first, I want to thank you, Monica, and the entire team for really expanding on the level of information that you provided in this section. This was the area that I had the most questions on. Most of the other sections were pretty clear in terms of what they did because they had fewer items and you had more room to be able to expand on them. So that's to start this, but I still have a number of questions. Starting with the very first section on, this is the collaborative culture and climate. I really appreciated what Dr. Now I'm drawing a blank. Dr. Lopez talked about with respect to the restorative practices and the 4 phases. He mentioned that it's a 3 to 5 year journey as part of this process. I don't think we've ever heard that end-to-end story around the restorative practices journey, or maybe I've missed that in previous conversations. We have talked about it? Okay.
We did at policy.
So you may have talked about it at policy, but I'm not sure it's been shared with the full board. So one of the things that would be really useful is to be able to outline the broad pieces of that 3 to 5 year journey, because I know I heard that there's 4 phases and we're in phase 2 right now. So it'd be useful to understand what are those other phases, because I have specific questions, but if those are just pieces that we've not got to yet, then I don't think it matters for me to drill into those things. For example, at the one policy meeting that I did attend, which was great, there was a discussion on how restorative practices would apply to coaches and to other people as part of the staff, to going beyond just our teachers and everything else. And so I suspect that would be included as part of that 3 to 5 year plan. So rather than me asking questions about that, I'd if you can provide something that would help the rest of the board understand that would be useful. The second question in this section.
Hey, Pat, I'm sorry. Did you want them to talk right now, or just provide us
if they
something
can-
via
I don't
board
need-
notes or
yeah,
something?
board notes
Okay.
would be fine. If there's already a presentation, or if there isn't something that's prepared, perhaps at a later date, something that you could share with the entire board. If it's outside of board notes in a board meeting, that would be fine. The next thing I had was with respect to item 2 in the goals and the collaborative monitoring of data walks. And this relates some of the work that Anthony talked about. And we've heard in some of the school presentations about data walks and how we're using the NWEA data, but it hasn't really been consistently applied. There were some groups that used data walls and really drilled down into specific students and started to better understand that process. So I guess my question is, this kind of relates across 2 subject areas, the collaborative culture there, as well as the work that we do on data walks, or I'm sorry, what we're doing in the data culture. What is our efforts to be able to provide a unified process around that? How do we make it so that data becomes more deeply used across the entire district, and how do we incorporate those PLCs in using that data in a more consistent manner?
So I'll ask Mr. Varela to talk a little bit further. He's been leading a number of different training experiences to build the capacity of our staff.
So it's varied at different buildings for different reasons. You know, talking about the data walls for example, in some buildings, having a separate space where they could have a data wall can occur because every classroom is being used. So one of the things that some buildings do is they actually create mobile data walls where they actually have boards of all students within the classroom and student information on them. And after assessment cycles, depending upon what they're looking at, whether maybe it's assessment cycles within NWEA or different data points if they're looking at DRA at elementary level, depending upon the classroom, they'll meet as grade level teams and bring out the data boards and look at specific students and talk about what those students still need in order to progress where they should be. For other buildings are doing it electronically. So really, it depends on where buildings are in their capacity. And that's been one of the powerful pieces about the NWEA training that we've been doing, is because it's all the schools, the K schools together. So within that work, there's lots of facilitated work time where buildings actually sit next to each other and they discuss what they're doing, how they're utilizing data within their building, within their grade levels, also within their classrooms. And that conversation also winds up happening within our school improvement meetings that we have with our building school improvement teams. Again, because a big focal point of what we're doing is examining data and how are we using that data to drive instructional planning, both long-term school improvement as well as short-term instructional cycles. So really it varies, and right now we're at the point where we're just sharing that through collaboration, and utilizing specific data protocols and getting tight around how we look at data, and then sharing what we're doing with the data in order to best serve students.
So I recognize that it's a learning process, but I think that it's one of the most underutilized resources that we have as a district is the amount of data that's available. And I'd love to see a formal process that takes the best practices that occur in different schools and unifies those things across the district, because we see some schools that just do a fantastic job with this and some that don't do anything. And I think that if we look at the work that Mark is doing from an electronic perspective, a virtual data wall might be a great way to be able to address some of those things and to provide a unified process.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I was talking about exploring with that real-time student dashboard and early warning systems in terms of creating a systemic approach, with respect to do the resources that we have within MyStar and Illuminate allow us to have that consistent practice that an outside vendor might have. So that's our work for next year, is figuring out, can we leverage what we currently have access to in order to meet our needs? But really, some of our needs are emerging as people as they develop their capacity, right? Especially with data, and you know this, right? When you get some information, then you realize, oh, what I don't have and what else could I use?
I guess I'm looking for a more purposeful process to be able to drive to standardization and some timelines associated with that. So,
and we're getting there.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So Member Kehoe, can you give me an idea of how many more questions you have?
20?
Are any of these questions ones that could be sent by email?
No, because there's a dialogue that needs to happen with.
Okay. Well, let's let some other members ask questions if they have any.
Sure.
Are there questions from other members? Okay. I have one question, and it's for Ms. Mosier, and I don't know if you know the answer or not, but I was wondering, when you were talking about training new teachers on the NGSS and the NGSC, or SX, I think that's great, because obviously we want all our teachers to start from the same place. I was wondering if you know if teacher education programs are teaching new teachers these also.
So I wouldn't know that. Okay. I would say just if it's through a curriculum process in any teacher education program, they would go through a curriculum type class, and that would probably be exposed there, but I wouldn't know that for a fact.
Okay. Okay.
So I had related questions in this area. So the work that we're doing in the NGSS and NGSX, seems like science is across the state is one of the areas that's the lowest performing. Is this work that we're doing things that will specifically drive our achievement rates in those science tests, or is this aligned to the state testing standards to that?
So the state approved the standards a couple of years ago, so we are getting in that along with many other districts. This is what we've been doing in the planning phases of doing the NGSS, which is the new standards. So the state testing, 1920? 1920 is when the new state testing comes out for the standards currently that we are prepping for. So the NGSS standards that we are starting to do our curriculum development on is for testing for 1920.
Got it. So the scores that we see on MSTEP and the other process with respect to science is not related to the current, or I'm sorry, to the new curriculum that will go into effect next year?
They're created from the MSTEP through the state in which standards they're using. I will hopefully say that they're using the current standards.
Okay. And so the next question I had in this area was around the online learning programs and the blended and hybrid processes.
Sure.
We've talked about how we did 6 teachers that we've done with that program currently. We've talked about in the plan process exploring the online learning opportunities. How does that differ from the pilot that we did on the blended learning opportunities?
So a blended class is one where part of it is online, or students could do that work kind of like a flipped classroom. You might have heard that language before. So they could do some work online, and then they'd still be in the classroom seat for other times, and it might be differentiated instruction. So based off the content there, if a student didn't maybe perform well on an early assessment, like a walk-in assessment, they would go maybe into this group, and I would work individually with that group, or this group could then continue that learning. Online means completely online learning experience. So that would be a course that would be delivered online, and a student would kind of do that from home, or we would maybe look at recruiting other students to come in if we had that course approved.
So, and we've talked about hybrid as well. So hybrid and blended are really the same thing?
Similar.
Okay. Similar, or?
You could look at hybrid as also an option where students are not here the whole day, where we're really having most of our students stay in the classroom or coming into the classroom. So when you think of your 9th grade courses, those students don't really have a way to transport back and forth. So we're looking at labs and things like that, that they might take those and go to a lab to do some of their online experiences and come back, or it would just stay in the classroom based off the seating in the classroom.
So we did 6 teachers in the pilot program for blended. How is that growing going forward? Is it only those 6 teachers? Is that pilot going to be formalized as a standard process?
So those courses are still in a pilot stage because there's more work to be done. We are looking at funds to help do that because it's writing curriculum, it's writing the program. It is a lot of work. Because you're basically transforming all your materials to be accessible online. That includes videos, that includes assessments, that includes assessments within the videos. Anything that you could imagine would really be attainable to students in that online. And then turn around and saying, if a student doesn't have it, what is my additional lesson, or how might I break up this lesson? So it's almost doubling a little bit of what a teacher would do in trying to prep for a course like that.
So how long do we expect that pilot to last? We started it this year.
So we've done training and professional learning, and we keep budgeting for that time to keep those teachers up to date, and teachers going to some professional learning around that, so we can just kind of move that along. My goal would be that by next year we would hopefully get some of those courses in as actual courses, but it would have to go through the process.
Okay, so we're hoping that the pilot will only be this year, and that next year we will have had success with that pilot and could put them into.
Correct.
We're not going to extend the pilot again into next year.
Correct.
Okay, great. And then with the online program, how many programs are we planning on doing with that?
I don't have a number because we're just exploring the different options on how to do an online course. So there's ways, working with through Wayne Risa, some of the discussions are we can take courses that are already out there and update them, or we could look at building our own. So the discussion is really what would be our best option and which courses might we want to look at doing that with.
Okay, and you spoke about the curriculum compounding with respect to the middle school math courses. We've seen a lot of struggles in the middle school math programs with students looking to accelerate or to skip 6th grade math or skip 8th grade math, and that's created gaps in the content areas that students are part of. And I know that there's been a number of discussions on how to address that while still supporting the needs of those students and allowing them to take advanced classes in the high school level. Is this curriculum compounding a part of that process? Is it that process? How does that work?
So sure. So curriculum compacting is just a little bit different. So I think it would be in support of that. So ideally, when the Michigan academic standards came out, what we knew as pre-algebra didn't really exist anymore. Those concepts were into the 6th, 7th grade curriculum, a little bit into 8th. And 8th grade curriculum now is mostly pre-algebra and a little bit of algebra. So what we all traditionally took as a course as pre-algebra and algebra, right? We don't have that. Those were embedded into the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade curriculum. So when that transition happened, a lot of those foundational skills that students needed in 6th and 7th grade, if they miss them, we see them later on. So we see it in the testing of an SAT even. So some of those basic skills where they can do the higher level math because they've been doing that, but they might miss out on some of those simpler skills. So going back, that would be one reason why a gap may occur. So when we look forward in that, we say, okay, how can we, if a student isn't scoring the achieved level that we would say would be acceptable to be accelerated or skip a whole grade, then we'd say, how can we still meet those student needs, right? Because a student might be accelerated in one unit or in a couple units, but they shouldn't be sitting maybe having that same material. So curriculum compacting would help with that, right? Because then that student's not getting that same material, but they're applying it and doing a project-based or something along that. And when I say that, we're looking at also integrating other content. So it might be a little bit of art with your geometry or something like that. So then the student expresses and it has a little more application to their learning.
So Member Mullen, I think, has a question, if you don't mind.
I have a question, a follow-up question actually about blended classroom and the flipped classroom. So as I understand it, the teacher is putting materials, videos, things online, some of the work outside, some of the work inside. Do we have a time limit for students? Are we saying to teachers 15 minutes, half an hour? What is our time frame for the students' involvement in the online courses outside of school? And my concern comes from hearsay that in a flipped classroom that the students were watching an entire half-hour, 45-minute lesson every day and then still had the full amount of homework and then still went into class the next day. Are we cognizant of time in what we're asking students to do at home in addition to a school day when we plan these things?
So great question. So that was actually brought up at a parent council meeting, and that was one of the things that we've taken back that we'd have to address to make sure how is this class set up, because one of the things that also came back to us was more so could a student elect knowing that they may have this extra work or maybe have to watch these videos or something. So I think that's part of that process. So when we go back to saying online and blended options, and before we just say we're doing them, those are things that we'd have to address.
Okay, and embedded in my question is the concern that we're adding more and more and more. And then we have to be cognizant, these are kids, they've done a full day of school, they have activities, they have other things. We don't need another hour on top of. So I'm glad to hear it was addressed in the parent council, and then that's part of the process. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to need to change the tape, so I would like to take a 5-minute break, and then we will reassess when we come back.
Great.